Michael and Kevin, I just started the recording and it's not moving. It says it's active, but it says 0000. Is that okay or not? Because usually it starts counting. It is streaming? Okay, it's just not showing up here. Good evening and welcome to our first board meeting for the 2017-2018 school year. The date is Wednesday, September the 6th, 2017. I'd like to welcome everyone who is in, and I believe everyone is in attendance tonight. And I would also like to welcome our audience, which includes some students from Brock. Before I start, I would also like to introduce some new members around the table, which we'll have more information about them later. But I would like to introduce our student trustees. Trustee Dasha Metroplansky, who you may remember from last year, has returned. And Trustee Moktasid Mansour, who is, did I say it wrong?
Moktasid Mansour.
Okay, Moktasid Mansour. Well, you have to train me. I'd like to welcome you to our table, and we look forward to your contributions and being part of the Student Voice. And I would also like to introduce our new superintendent who has joined us, Colette Raddick, who is sitting over on my left. Welcome. We look forward to working with all of you. All right. So I'd like to remind everyone that we are being video voice recorded and live streamed. And if you have anything that makes noise, if you could please silence it or turn it off, it would be greatly appreciated. I would like to, the Halton District School Board acknowledges and thanks the First Peoples of this territory and other Indigenous people for the use of this land in order for us to continue our work today. All right, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Trustee Gray, seconded by Trustee Gerbentz. Is there any discussion on our agenda tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Is there any possible conflicts of interest anybody would like to declare tonight? Seeing none, we'll move to our delegation presentation portion of the board meeting. First item is the Inspire Awards, and we have no Inspire Awards tonight because they were all awarded at our June meeting, but we will have some at the beginning of our October, in our first meeting in October. So we do have a couple of, our next one is very important. We have the Student Trustee Oath Declaration for both Trustee Metroplansky and Trustee Mansour. Director Miller?
If Moktasid, Trustee Mansour, I should say, and Trustee Metroplansky, well, actually, not yet. Moktasid and Dasha, if you could come around the front, I'll come and meet you at the front.
If you'd like to come up and take pictures, please feel free.
You can come right here if you want. Come on over here, right in front of that gives us the room. Okay. And let's do it one at a time. I'll tell you this first. Dasha.
I knew it.
Okay, Dasha. Hello.
Testing.
Okay. So go ahead, just go ahead.
I, Dasha Metropolitansky, do solemnly declare that, in accordance with the Education Act, related legislation, and board policies and procedures, I will truly, faithfully, impartially, and to the best of my ability execute the office of student trustee. In my role as student trustee, I will comply with freedom of information and protection of personal privacy and conflict of interest legislation, recognizing the importance of maintaining the confidentiality of the board with regard to matters that are dealt with in closed session, and declare not to divulge any important information of the contents of any material shared with trustees in closed meetings, and that I am not disqualified under any requirement from being a student trustee member of the Halton District School Board.
Thank you, Dasha. And we'll sign in a second. Okay, we'll get Melissa to do his part now. There you go, sir. And there's your microphone, and face your mom and dad.
Okay, I, Mugdis Mansour, do solemnly declare that, in accordance with the Education Act, related legislation, and board policies and procedures, I will truly, faithfully, impartially, and to the best of my ability, execute the office of student trustee. In my role as student trustee, I will comply with the freedom of information and protection of personal privacy and conflict of interest legislation, recognizing the importance of maintaining the confidentiality of the board with regard to matters that are dealt with in closed session, and declare not to divulge any information of the contents of any material shared with trustees in closed meetings, and that I am not disqualified under any requirement from being a student trustee member of the Halton District School Board.
Thanks, Mark. That's it. Now we'll do the signing. Don't sign that long. Sign it like this so your mom can see. Sign it like that.
Come on up.
Go right there.
Come on up.
Okay, now I'll sign both. Yeah, what else is there?
One day. You got such a short signature for such a long name.
That's yours, Dasha?
Thank you.
And that's yours. That's it. Congratulations. We now declare the student trustees, Muqtasid Mansour and Dasha Metropolan. Well, it would be nice to have all the trustees with the kids in a few minutes. All right, we'll stand like this. You can always Photoshop me out. Well, I think you should have a picture with all the trustees, though. You want to have a team now? Yeah?
Normally we bring in 5 chairs, but you the student trustees in the chair.
Got 5 chairs coming. There's 2. Oh, there comes 3.
You?
One more chair on your side over here.
Kelly, you go between him and Tim and I'll sit on the edge. I can stand at the back. It might be a bit tight. Why don't I stand at the back?
Perfect. Yep. You did. We're good.
Did they get a copy?
Yeah, the one you gave them the copy. This is just ours for.
Well, congratulations to our two new student trustees, and we look forward to your contributions this year, because I know from what has happened in the past, you've only made our board better, and I know that will happen this year, so thank you. All right, so now we're up to our presentations, and our first presentation is Superintendent Truffin. Is he still here? Technology and you.
What did he think we were calling him for?
And welcome Kathy Tier as well.
Yep, thank you, Trustee Miss, and all the trustees and student trustees. Just quickly, my general manager, our general manager, Kathy Thayer of Information Services, who has been quoted the smartest person in information services. I didn't say that, but people in the department say that. So we're here tonight to, but I do think it. Yes.
That's good.
Tonight actually is a good news presentation. This has been some work that myself, Kathy, and a lot of people in our department have been working on. This is the Technology and You resource website that I know we presented to you in February at Committee of the Whole. I would like to show you the introduction video that will be, right now it's on our internal website, but it's not open to the public. But the voice, I was pressured with the voice. I wanted another voice, but I was pressured by some people on my team. But the purpose of the video is to basically introduce the video to staff, students, and parents. So I'll show that video.
Technology and You is a resource that is designed for our students, staff, and parents. In an increasingly technology-driven, knowledge-intensive, and globalized world, it is important to prepare our students for success. Our schools, students, and families have access to an abundance of devices: smartphones, tablets, laptops, Chromebooks, virtual reality, smart TVs exist in our homes and in our schools. The Ministry of Education has stated that Ontario is committed to helping every child and student achieve success and well-being. The primary goal of the province's education system is to enable students to develop the knowledge, skills, and characteristics that will lead them to become personally successful, economically productive, and actively engaged citizens. The Halton District School Board's vision is every student will explore and enhance their potential, passions, and strengths to thrive as contributing global citizens. We are committed to helping our students use technology in a safe and responsible way. Our Technology and You website defines and explains what digital citizenship means. Being a good digital citizen means students and staff will use caution while online. Users will protect and not share passwords. Protect the privacy of self and others. Recently, we sent posters to all of our schools and buildings. Think while you're online. Is it true, helpful, inclusive, necessary, kind? Our goal is for our students, staff, and parents to access the Technology and You website to help promote technology in a safe manner and participate responsibly in our digital world.
So that video is, this is the way the website looks right now is how it will look to the public. Kathy, in a minute, will go into the details of the website. But just really just to let you know, this resource that we've put together and why it took many months to do is it's a consolidation of all the information that we currently have both on our public website and our internal website, which is My HDSB, which is available to staff. So we've spent the greater part of the last year developing this resource and also getting feedback. We've gotten feedback from the senior team, admin council. We've gotten feedback from you as trustees, if you recall, from the February committee of the whole meeting. We've gotten feedback from elementary and secondary administrators. We took this to our ICT lead learners, both elementary and secondary. We took it to our IT and innovation advisory group, which has teachers, administrators, and trustees on it. So we took an abundance of feedback. We tried to incorporate as much as we possibly could. And so what we have now is a resource that we think, well, is ready to go to our schools. And we're ready to, I'll talk about marketing after Kathy shows you the website, but we're ready to go to our schools and our community. So I'll turn it over to Kathy to just quickly show you the website that we've developed.
So thank you for having us. As we built the website, we wanted to make sure that it respected mobile technology tablets and was able to be scalable. As well, the feedback that we did gain and we went through and we were sure to incorporate as much as we could. We've added some components for throughout the entire site where if there's more information, there's a plus and minus. This is standard with various technologies and websites out there. Something that did come back from feedback was to ensure that people didn't feel like they got lost when they were looking through the website. And that was really important to us as this is a consolidation of information and we wanted it to be easy to use no matter your comfort level with technology. And it's for students of all ages as well. So when you're on the technology side, all the tabs will appear in blue. What's it highlighted down below will appear a little bit more bolded. Privacy and security, social media and cyberbullying. On each sub-tab, there's a lot of information that could go there, but it could be overwhelming. So we wanted to make sure that we pulled out the highlights and the important pieces that we really wanted people to understand and to take in. We, as an information services department, have committed to continually reviewing this. So, we will be updating it ongoing throughout the entire school year and part of our marketing strategy that Gord will talk about in a few moments. But we wanted to make sure, again, the information that was there wasn't overwhelming, that it was clear, easily understood, could be viewed by various, levels and reading levels even, again, targeting students as well. And answering some common questions. So part of our review will be, what are we frequently getting asked and making sure that we have the references on the website that we can point people to and that when they search the site, they'll be able to find those answers.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. And just finally, with marketing communication, we have had the opportunity to meet with Superintendent Etoff and our Manager of Communications, Marty Denton, about the marketing communication. We've also created some posters. I did give you a sample of a Technology and You poster. Again, these are ready to go out to our schools. We sent the Think posters last spring, and it's interesting with my school ops colleagues. You never know what happened to posters when you send 50 posters to schools. You never know what happens to them. But what's really, really interesting is the first school that asked for an additional 50 copies was one of our high schools. So I thought that was very interesting because that really, I wasn't expecting that. I was perhaps expecting that from some of maybe our larger elementary schools, but it was within a day, it was one of our larger secondary schools, wanting more copies. These posters are ready to go out. And in terms of, again, marketing, this website will be on, hoping that will work, yes. The website there will be a button on this banner bar, so it'll be if any parent, student, teacher goes to the website, this have your say, I believe is a temporary button. So, this button will be going, we'll be creating a button for this bar as well. So we're excited for this resource. Whenever we present it to the staff, principals, they're also welcoming this because, as I said, this is a consolidation of a lot of information that is already on our corporate and MySGSB website. Kathy and I are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure why you complained about the voice. It was very good. I just sounded very familiar. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Truffin, and your colleagues for the wonderful work you've done. I love the website and all the information that's there, and I love the poster and another poster that I had seen that was featured in the video. It's exactly the kind of information that I think we should have, and as you've pointed out, it's got to be the highlights and easy to read and understand because these are kids who will be perusing as well, and we want them to get the to understand what they're reading and for it to stick. One suggestion I have is, actually I have two suggestions or questions. I'm wondering if the website could be used during maybe the health class by a teacher to take the students, to take their students through the website, show them what's there and the importance as it relates to health and safety. And the second question or suggestion I have is, I love the poster, but I know with some kids, pictures are catchy and the pictures will get them to read the comment. And so if we could maybe come up with something that for every sticky on here that has kind of a fun and funky cartoon that will, that kind of represents the key message, but also gets the student to have a look and read the words. So those are two things that I suggest.
Certainly, in terms of health class, certainly I would look to Superintendent Salmini and if it can be worked into a program. However, I will say that cyberbullying and safety online is already part of the health and safety curriculum. So yeah, you know what? I hope that they would use this resource because you know what? It wouldn't take very long for a classroom teacher to show this resource. So that's a good suggestion. I would just get approval and permission from Salmini to promote it that way, but I'm sure that's okay.
Yeah, certainly we can take that back to.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And then more picks. Thank you. I guess second edition, because we've spent a lot of time looking at this, Trustee Oliver, and I do see your point, but we are ready where we've gone through some different editions and we're ready to send them out to schools. So with respect, is that okay? Okay, good.
I'm just thinking of another iteration of the poster.
Absolutely.
Not a replacement,
Noted.
But just an add-on, something to consider in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you, Trustee Gerbins.
Thank you, Chair Amos. I love what I see here. And all I'm wondering is if, because it also needs to go beyond the students and the staff, it needs to get to the parents as well, because a lot of them are managing the technology that is going to the schools and are potentially the first contact as well. So if they understand what the rules, regulations, safety, those sort of things, they can also reinforce whatever we're saying in the schools. And so I was wondering if we're going to be putting out a press release, because it's a good news item, and also getting it, of course, on our Facebook and Twitter, because I'd love to be able to share this as well.
Yes, because with our marketing and branding, we are absolutely going, and with the help of Marty Denton, Communications Department, we're going to be sharing this with all of our community partners, police, Halton Region. We really, and the first time our director saw this, he said the exact same thing. He wants this promoted, and we are going to do that. Marketing and branding, absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to give you my deepest thanks, concern and interest in internet safety and safe use of technology. were both driving factors in bringing me to aspire to this current role because of profound situations that happened with people close to me. And I feel that this is based on what I've seen on various websites, that this does represent an industry best practice in the education sector in Ontario. And it's my hope that through OPSPA we can share this information. I know there's often focus on cyberbullying and so on, but equally important is how people can use technology in a safe way. And I appreciate also your comments on, ongoing improvement, ongoing incorporation of new data as it becomes available. And yeah, again, thank you. And I appreciate the way that the information's conveyed. I think it's clear and concise, and thanks.
I appreciate that. And it is a live document. And I know someone who had a lot to do with this is watching tonight, and Patty Self would appreciate your nice words as well.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comments from trustee, I'd like to thank you both for the presentation, and it is very exciting, and I think that you're going to find it's going to be a very well-used page and a very great resource for not just parents and students, but probably for staff as well. So thank you very much for all the hard work that went into it. All right, so Trustee Blackwell, do you need the lights off or on? Oh, sorry, Superintendent Blackwell. I'm trying to promote her. Okay, Superintendent Blackwell is going to present on the PAR implementation update. Welcome, Superintendent Blackwell. Director Miller.
Yeah, I have a few comments before Superintendent Blackwell begins the presentation. I don't want to circumvent her update or report, so there'll be another opportunity during the director's report to ask some questions. I mean, you can ask them now as well, but Superintendent Blackwell will be giving a report on the plans thus far and the work thus far and the plans going forward around the implementation of the decision made by the board on June 7th around the Burlington PAR. But it would be remiss if we didn't talk about at the front end of this the appointment of an admin review facilitator. So I'll back up a little bit so people understand the process, including the public. On July 4th, the Robert Bateman community submitted a request for an admin review to the Ministry of Education. On July 7th, the Lester B. Pearson community submitted an application or request for an administrative review of the PAR process to the Ministry of Education. We were given notification of that, and we were then given 30 days to respond to the comments, concerns, and issues that both of those requests had raised. We responded to those, and we provided those to the Ministry of Education on August 3rd. The ministry then had 30 days from actually August the 4th, not August 3rd, that's when we put it in, but they had 30 days from August the 4th to respond to the petitioners, which is the Robert Bateman community and the Lester B. Pearson community. As you know, on September 5th, we received notice that those requests had met the criteria to appoint an independent administrative review facilitator. And the ministry is actively pursuing a person with the appropriate qualifications to conduct an independent review of the process. The facilitator will not conduct a review of the decision, but the process. I think, and I think our staff would agree, that this is a very good thing. This was a difficult and contentious process, and the community has many concerns, and there's mistrust of some of what we did. Some of the community, I should say, not the community, some of the community didn't trust the process. They didn't trust the ministry's process. And so they have made many arguments, and clearly some of their arguments, or all of their arguments, because I don't know at this point, resonated with the Ministry of Education, that they decided that it met the criteria to appoint an independent reviewer. I think this is good for everyone involved. It's good for the community that an independent reviewer will then look at our process. It's good for us as a board that they will look at the process we used and any flaws or anything that we may have done that raised some red flags with the Ministry of Education and the community. And it's good for the Ministry of Education because it demonstrates that they too are acting independently and so on. So I look forward to, not just I think I'm speaking on behalf of senior staff here, we look forward to what the reviewer finds. I know very little about the process. All I do know is that they are actively pursuing finding a facilitator at this point. They have been facilitations around the province, and that this is about the process and not the decision. And presumably there will be recommendations that come out of that review. I cannot say for certain that's what happens because I have not being made aware of those by the Ministry of Ed. Now, for the community, why I wanted to talk about this now is I guess, a legitimate question by the community: should we carry on with our plans? And the answer is yes, we should carry on with our plans. It was a decision of the Board of Directors on June 7th, and it's incumbent upon us that we continue to act on that decision and look at our implementation plan. I also understand that the community might be quite concerned that we would be spending a great deal of money in this time period, and I support that concern of the community, and therefore we will not be doing any expensive, high-cost moves at this point. We are cognizant of what the community may think and what others may think, that it's not appropriate for us to go out and spend a lot of money on this process in this interim period while the independent reviewer is looking at the process. However, I do believe, particularly, that with the Lester B. Pearson, M.M. Robinson situation, that the decision was that these students would attend M.M. Robinson on June 18th. If we were to do nothing around integration, around transition of these students, and then upon the results of the independent review and the impartial review, it's found that that everything goes as is, we would have lost a great deal of time in working with those students, both at M.M. Robinson and Lester B. Pearson, and in fact, Dr. Frank Hayden, in integration committees and working with these students. It would be very unfair for those students to all of a sudden find out January, February, that it's all going. Plus, we need to develop program books and so on. So hence, those plans will go forward. Where we will be very wary is any concrete expenditures. The other thing is we will appoint an architect at some point in the next 2 board meetings, and but that too is low cost because there will be no fees to the architect until the design is actually created, and the architects will work with the community. So I know some in the community will say stop everything. The review is about the process, not the decision. And to stop everything, I think, in terms of integration of students and working with students, would be unfair to those students going forward. They would have lost a great deal of time if the decision is, in fact, goes forward for next year, particularly, as I said, the M.M. Robinson, Lester B. Pearson consolidation and the Dr. Frank Hayden. So I'll turn it over to, unless there's some questions, I'll turn it over to Terry. Our Superintendent.
Is this a question for the director? Trustee Collard.
Thank you. You've said that the review is about the process, not the decision. And I know that for some members of the community, they won't understand what you mean by that comment. Have there ever been decisions made by boards that have been overturned by administrative reviews? I guess would be the most direct way to get the answer.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee Collard, the answer to that question, I cannot speak for years ago, but under the current process, the answer would be no. Because the facilitator, the independent admin reviewers facilitation is not about the decision, it's about the process. Having said that, the independent reviewer may make recommendations that gives everyone pause to re-look at the decision. Whether that has occurred around the province, I don't have any history on that, and I don't know. But they do not have the authority to overturn a decision. But they do have great authority in making, I believe, because I'm going to have a briefing from the ministry on this, which I haven't had yet, recommendations about the process, which may lead to a rethinking of the decision or a rethinking of the so on. So,
go ahead.
So then the rethinking of the decision would still fall within the trustee realm.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee Collard, yes.
And seeing no further questions, Superintendent Blackwell.
Great, thank you. There we go. Just to clarify, the movement of students to Lester B. Pearson, from Lester B. Pearson to M.M. Robinson is September of 2018. I think it was misquoted. Sorry to correct you, Director. I did want to take the time this evening to share with you some of the work that's happened and some forward-thinking pieces and big picture pieces around all of the decisions that were made in June of 2017. Those recommendations that were approved, they tell us the what. Now is the real work. Now it's the how, and how we're going to work with our communities to ensure the successful transition of not only students, but staff and families and community members. So we will be bringing bi-monthly updates to the board in a format as one of the ways of communicating not only what we've been doing and some process updates, but also to share some of the opportunities to be involved. I've had many communications from community members, from students, from parents, from staff that are very interested in being engaged in this process. We are in day 2 of the school year. There will be opportunities to do that, and I will share when those opportunities will come up, because there are some great ideas already stirring. There's some great interest, and we know that people are very invested in making this positive for students as we are. So I'm going to take you, provide you with a 4-year overview, and I've got some big picture pieces in here. We know that there is a decision to bring Lester B. Pearson and M.M. Robinson community together. We know that there is a process in which we'll be looking at a theme, a magnet, a focus, an incubator school. We'll call that the Aldershot Focus Exploration. We know that there is going to be an integration where Robert Bateman will be closing in June of 2020, and students will be moving to Central as well as Nelson. So when does all of this happen, and how can people have an opportunity to be involved? So if we look at this year, and I've tried to create it so that we can look at the layering pieces over the next 3 or 4 years. Integration committees are formed the year before a school closes to work with schools, specifically with staff, students, parents, the communities, the 2 communities, and they happen the year before because it looks at the kids and the staff and the students that are in the building. We know that they will be critical in ensuring that that work supports all of the students in the building. We also know that by our policy that our integration committee includes a school council chair or designate. We will include additional members beyond our committee. I'll talk about that in a second. But those elections do not happen until September of the current school year. So M.M. Robinson and Lester B. Pearson, those elections are upcoming, and the committee work, we've got dates already scheduled. The membership hasn't been created, but they will be happening monthly throughout the school year. The Exploration Committee, a report is coming to the board in February of 2018, so there's a lot of work to be done in a short period of time. And again, with the parent representation, it's a bigger community engagement piece with the Aldershot because it's beyond the Aldershot school community, and I'll bring more information to that at our next meeting. Again, it will be occurring this year. In terms of Robert Bateman, Burlington Central, and the Robert Bateman Nelson integration committees, they will not happen until the year before the school closes. So that's in the 2019-2020 school year. That being said, there are lots of pieces that we need to put in place for that, and we know specifically around the facility and the program consultation, that'll be a lot of work this year and engaging those communities as well, and knowing that, you know, we are very invested in making sure that there's some thinking around that as we work through. So that's the work this year, just a little bit. Next year, MM Robinson, the Lester B. Pearson moved to MM Robinson. We'll have to ensure that there's ongoing monitoring, and we've made a commitment to monitoring in the policy, in the decisions. This is the monitoring of the things that we said we were going to do. Did we do them? Do we need to change course? One of the examples would be artifacts and memorabilia. How are we honoring different pieces of history, and did we do what we say we were going to do? So that will be part of next year's work. If there is a recommendation going forward with the exploration at Aldershot, then we would be developing the program over next year, and then we would continue to provide updates around Robert Bateman, Burlington Central, and Nelson. And then in 1920, as I mentioned earlier, those integration committees would be formed to support the transition of students and staff to Burlington Central and to Nelson. And again, the monitoring of those pieces. So that being said, this year there's additional communication that are not necessarily pieces in those big pictures at the top of the last diagram. We know that French immersion program, students entering grade 9 in September of 2018 will be starting at MM Robinson. We can probably guess that most of the students that are at in the French immersion program at Dr. Frank J. Hayden are aware of what's happening. We also know that there may be elementary parents that do not know what this decision means and what that impact is. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. The extended French program will be moving. The LEAP program that we have that is in our high schools, we'll bring an update on that. But that communication is usually done through our schools and the school principals. As well, we've said that as of September 2018, the Tecumseh catchment, the entire catchment will be now moving to Burlington Central. So those pieces need to be communicated and shared with our communities. We also made a commitment to look at 2 locations for the gifted placement in Burlington and to see if it was a viable option. So we will be working, I'm going to be at SEAC on the 12th. We're going to be looking at a survey and connecting with the community and seeing if that is something that we would pursue. So we have been working behind the scenes since June. We do want you to know that we've been working and thinking about this. We also want you to know that we have not gone and done all of the plans and not involved the communities and the staff and the students. That's a lot of the work this year. But I've had an opportunity to meet with SEAC. I'll be going to, through Superintendent Zonnefeld, we'll be working together with SEAC to bring different pieces to SEAC and talk about implications and ask for feedback. There are many examples of other boards that have dealt with transitions, integration. We've looked at, there's some new ministry resources that look at best practices and case studies. We've had lots of communication with them. Had the opportunity to meet with staff, parents, and community members over the summer, as well as talk to a few students. So that will continue, and that commitment to being open and transparent and available will continue. We've got some communication pieces I'll talk about in a few seconds. There are many exploration focus programs, not only provincially, but nationally and internationally. There are lots of ideas that I talked to Trustee Reynolds, we're switching roles today. And she had a great phrase. She said, you know, the community is the spark and the board is the pedagogy, and how can we work together? So I thought that was a neat approach to that. We have an architect that there's a proposal that we're waiting to approve. Superintendent Cullen will report on that later. And we've asked for, we've already submitted capital priorities funding. Superintendent Veerman will speak to that this evening, as well as we're seeking early years capital funding for the relocation of the 2 daycare programs. Superintendent Prodderberg is working in consultation with our community partners, and they're very excited about some potential Burlington locations. So that work has already started, and important work. In terms of communication, because this will be key, there will be many avenues. We have created a page at our board website. It includes frequently asked questions. I would suggest that if you have questions in the community or as staff members and students, there are sections that are unique, and you'll see them in the screenshot. There's general questions, FAQs, as well as unique to each school. We will put committee agendas and records of action, PAR updates that we will provide every second month to community, to all of Burlington. And we also have a contact us email address set up, and it's on your screen. It's parimplementation@hdsb.ca. In terms of communication, and when you think from a student perspective and a parent perspective, where am I getting the communication? Often it is from my school community. We are working closely with our administrators because they are very versed in what's happening. They want to make sure that parents have the information that they need, that council meetings will contain updates if they need them, or they will have people come and work with them at the council meetings. That school communication is ongoing. One of the things that we've already started to work with schools on is grade 8 parent night for grade 9. And that's upcoming very soon, and will be important to have that information. We will, as I said, there will be PAR updates in writing, and there will also be board updates. So this is something, there is a video that has been created at our board website, and it's also my voice. We couldn't find anyone over the summer, so Superintendent Truffin and I are using our own voices. It does have an overview, and this is just a quick screenshot. It's very difficult to read, but it does go into detail for parents where their children are entering grade 9, starting in September of 2018. French immersion and English program, as well as indicates what's new, so that it's very clear to parents. An example is that we know that French immersion will be moving to Robinson, so you'll see that, and then it has the feeder school mapping. Again, that's not the only way that this message is being shared. It will be shared by school communities at the elementary, as well as the grade 8 parent evenings. Again, this is for all of the unique programs that we offer. One of the things that we said was very important in the creation or in the approval of these recommendations is we will have 2 composite high schools in Burlington, one in the north and one in the south. And these programs, there will be changes to location for some of these programs, so we've tried to articulate what this will look like. Again, this is on a video in the board website, but we will be communicating that on a regular basis with our schools as parents are making those decisions. Last thing is, just so the community is aware, we do have this website page up and running. It's searchable by PAR implementation. It's one of our main sliders at this point. It's just a starting point. We will continue to add to it. And again, it's the opportunities that we want to provide and communicate to people in the community, because they are very invested and want to participate. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You can see a lot of work has already happened over the summer, and a lot of people have been involved. You do have some questions. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. On the integration committees, you said you would be including the school council chairs. Have you thought about having any feeder school representation on the steer? And I know that some of these integration committees will be very large numbers of feeder schools, but perhaps a couple of feeder school representatives.
Thank you for the question. We have talked a little bit about who else to include in those committees because, as you mentioned, they get very large very quickly. One of the things, and we've had lots of parents that want to be part of those committees. I think it's important to realize that there will be a lot of subcommittees and a lot of opportunities for parents and students and staff to be involved in the subcommittee work. We have not defined the committees. That will be up to the committee members to determine. I would think that the feeder school opportunities to be part of the discussion would be out of that committee and creating opportunities for that conversation to happen. This is really about the transition of students that are in the building now and how that's happening. So for the grade 8 students that are coming in, they have not had, it's not the same focus of the work. But there will be definitely some communication there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for all of the information. I have a question about the daycares piece and the relocation. Through the PAR process, we heard a lot about the importance of those centers for members of those communities. And I just wondered, I know it's the subject of also the capital priorities report, whether those alternative locations have now been selected. And I think I heard you say in consultation or working with the operators. And I wonder to what extent and whose responsibility it's seen as to, I guess, be keeping the families and communities of those daycares in the loop of what's going on.
Through the chair to Trustee L. Harrison, I'm going to turn that over to Superintendent Potter-Barrick.
We did include specific schools in our capital submission, but we thought it premature to name them publicly until we actually get the funding secured, and we expect that probably within weeks, not even months. But they were selected, proximity to the existing their locations now, and also they did business case analysis around where their families are actually coming from, because childcare is not, as you know, it's not like a school boundary. They don't come from a specific kid. They come from all over the city, and so they're really feeling comfortable with the locations we put them in. It's just we thought it'd be more appropriate to announce them after they're actually confirmed, and we have the funding for them. Was there another question in there? In terms of communicating with their families, we would leave that to them to communicate directly to their families, because most of them aren't, of course, our parents in our system right now.
Thank you. And seeing no further comments or questions this time, I'd like to thank you very much, Superintendent Blackwell, for the update. And I know that we look forward to your next one. Thank you. All right. So we're now up to the consent agenda items. Can I have a motion for approval of and receipt of our consent agenda items? Moved by Trustee Reynolds, seconded by Trustee Pappen. Is there any discussion? Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. Bear with me. This is the first time we've done this consent thing. I have some comments about the Administrative Procedures Review Report, so could we pull that one, please?
Okay, thank you. Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a quick question about the board report schedule report 3.2.4.
So you'd like it pulled as well? Thank you. Okay. And seeing no further speakers, with the removal of the Administrative Procedures Review and Board Report Schedule report for further discussion, we now will vote on the consent agenda items. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. So we will now look at the Administrative Procedures Review. Director Miller. On page 21 of your board package. Maybe Trustee Harvey Hope could...
I'll make some comments and then thank you, Chair Amos. There are 4 administrative procedure updates in front of you: student excursions, day trips and in-school presentations, workplace violence prevention, library and instructional resources. All of them are minor changes except workplace violence prevention, which has some significant changes in it. And we've highlighted the minor changes in the other ones. And Executive Officer McFadden may want to speak to the workplace violence prevention before questions, or I'm not sure where yours is. So why don't you have a few words then?
Executive Officer McFadden.
Thank you. Through the chair, this administrative procedure was initially developed to be an umbrella procedure, and specific individual procedures were going to be developed as addendums to it. However, due to a Ministry of Labor order that we received in June, it was suggested that we instead put all of the procedures relating to violence in the workplace into one administrative procedure. So this is a consolidation, and if you were to compare it to the old admin procedure, you will see that the processes included in it are much more detailed, and it not only covers the old workplace violence procedures, it also talks about domestic violence and risk assessments for violence in the workplace. So it includes a lot more information than the previous admin procedure did. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Trustee Harvey Hope. You'll have to log in again. No, I had to reset. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. And this may highlight one of the questions I was going to suggest is the Administrative Procedures Report may need some subheadings so that if we do 6 or 7, we only pull the one we actually want to talk about. But anyway, thank you, Executive Officer McFadden, but that isn't actually where my questions were. I had highlighted some typo type things that'll be fixed, but nothing of consequence on that one. The student excursions and the day field trips and in-school procedures, apart from some housekeeping items, which are going to be fixed. My comments from a substantive point of view are a couple. One is under page 23 of the second page of the procedure of student excursions to start with, but I think it may actually be in both. It talks about no Halton District School Board shall solicit, employee shall solicit, encourage, promote, communicate anything about the travel during regular work hours, after work hours, and by any means of communication. And it goes on to mention everything there is, which I understand in theory, but there are some employees that would be highlighting in their after work hours, in their capacity as something other than a teacher, may be emailing personally. So this isn't very specific as far as whether or not they were allowed to promote any travel in their after work hours. Like, it doesn't say using your HDSB email or in your capacity as a teacher. And I mean, I know that's what one would assume, but I've come up across situations where, for instance, volunteers who are outside robotics or scouting or guiding or something else could actually, if you were to read this as strictly as it's read, could actually fall afoul of it when nobody means that's not what we mean. So I just wanted to point that out, whether or not it'd be a way to write in the capacity as a teacher or in their actions as a teacher or whatever, because we've made it everything, social media, talking to anybody.
If I can respond, and Superintendent or Executive Officer McFadden may want to weigh in here as well. The intent of this is that in any capacity, whether in their capacity as a teacher or their capacity as an individual person, if they're promoting a trip to our students, and they're in a position of being a teacher, and it's a non-school board sanctioned trip, that would be problematic for us.
Okay.
Is that,
I'll give you an example. If somebody is a scout leader with the same students in their scout group or students, period, promoting any trip of any kind. I mean, I understand we're trying to get around in effect, the S trips, but the after work hours of any capacity, I mean, they already have their standard teacher ethics on them anyway. But this is actually saying you can't ever email or be the person that sends emails to the scout groups or any other volunteer group, your soccer team or whatever. So I'm not sure that's what we meant. If it is what we meant, well, then I'm going to lose some communication people in other volunteer groups.
I understand the question. I mean, the primary intent of this are the S trips and those kinds of things. But, and there'll be lots of scenarios where we have teachers who coach or scouts or something that will be involved in trips, and they may be using their HDSB email to email those kids to come on or around it. So
But I'm saying is I understand if we wanted to say you cannot use your HDSB email. What I'm saying is it's saying you cannot talk to anybody after hours on any kind of social media, which means you're saying 24/7 you can't. And that's not exactly what I think we meant to say.
It isn't what we intended to say. You're right.
And we can look at that language, and I think the intent here is sort of broadcasting trips rather than if you've got a Cubs group or something like that, you're sending individual communications.
I know, yeah, okay. And then my other piece was I really appreciate the detail in how this works and the procedures and the finance things. I'm sure the office staff and the teachers and the secretaries and admin will be very happy to see it very laid out on who's doing what when. I was curious there's a couple places where it talks about the supervision must be a teacher or administrator, and I wondered whether we meant to exclude early childhood educators or whether we think of them as teachers in that category, because in the day trip wander around the corner from the field trip one, there may be circumstances where I may be wrong, but I think there's circumstances where you might end up with the ECE as the supervisor, and letter of the law, it's not in here, or whether we actually mean. So again, I think maybe that's just a word.
We really look at our ECEs as educators, and it just didn't cross our mind. We'll take that back and have that conversation.
We'll fix the language.
Trustee, I hope you've run out of time. You'll have to go back on the list. Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, my question is on the same procedure. With respect to student excursions, as you know, there was a tragedy on one of the recent TDSB outdoor education trips this year. We do have a statement in our procedure around safety and ensuring that OFIA safety guidelines and other necessary resources are used to ensure proper equipment training and preparation occurs with students prior to the trip. And I guess my question is this enough in light of what's happened, and do we animate that piece with families so they understand the potential implications if their students, for example, don't meet the required training and safety standards to attend a trip?
Through the chair to Trustee L. Harrison.
The tragedy in Toronto was indeed one that gave everyone across the province pause to reflect and to examine procedures and guidelines and processes within each of our own organizations, and we're no different, and we'll be doing that the beginning of the school year. The OFIA guidelines are the minimum standard of expectation across the province, and we very much do adhere to those and clarify what those mean to parents and to students. But in light of the recent tragedy, of course, we will be reviewing those with all of our staff and all of our trips and excursions as well as part of this fall and student injury prevention.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Hi, thank you through the chair. I just had a quick question on the same administrative procedure, page 23, third section down, titled the supervisor or chaperone. Second sentence in talks about the criminal record check and vulnerable sector screening. I was curious as to why it wouldn't state supervisors must have a current criminal background check. It seems to be the current is listed as for the annual offense declaration on file. I'm just wondering why it wasn't also listed for that as well.
Through you, Chair Amos, I'll take it. Through you, Chair Amos, Trustee Gray, we agree with you. We should put it in there. Put the word current for criminal background check and so on.
I wonder if I'm thinking now that there may be a reason that we don't need the current one because we have an annual sign off now with the offense declaration. So thanks for tweaking that. So we did have current in the old procedure, I believe, and now because we do an annual sign off, we may have the official background check maybe 3 years old, but we've now since signed off on it 3 years in a row, and does that make sense?
And lesson learned by the director, always let the people that know what they're talking about answer the question.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey-Hope.
On that point, we also have volunteers now sign off annually as well, whereas it used to be you put it in and for the however long your kid's in the school. So now they also have to sign off on an annual one. Anyway, my other comment was about, again, the same two things, and this time about in the finance side. I noticed that, again, I comment that I really like the detailed administrative procedures as far as collecting funds and who does it and what the secretary does and what the teacher does, but it ignores cashless. Nowhere in any of this does it acknowledge that the teacher is going to be having, in some schools, a mixture of cashless permission forms sent in with cashless and permission forms sent in with checks. So in the thing that says you must send the money to the office every day, it just is silent on cashless. And so I think to be sort of complete, need to make some kind of a reference to that, because some schools are 100% cashless and some schools are still quite a mix. And so the idea being that the teacher is going to collect the permission forms with some receipt numbers in some cases and with checks in other cases. And so in some cases it could be the teacher might have one with a check one day and it's still required. It's not like wait then. So I think maybe we should be more clear.
Yeah, I think our thinking, if I may respond to that, was that we do have reference to money collected and dispersed. We have reference to the admin procedures that deal with those processes. So we'll take that back, but I wondered whether our thinking may have been that to include all of that in here. This is a pretty hefty procedure. We don't want that to get lost, but we do reference the school-generated and school funds admin procedure.
I'll be really specific. On the last page, the last line of 27, it says class participant list detailing payment by cash or check. It's actually cash or check or cashless. So, you're going to have a list that has 3 columns rather than 2 columns. I mean, this is very specific procedure. So in that case, the teacher, that's why there's no money going with that form. So that's just what I mean by very specific, not that you need to tell them how to do the cashless thing.
I don't believe it's called cashless anymore. I think there's a new terminology for it.
Lucy, what's it called? What's it called, Lucy?
School Cash Online or just School Cash?
Johnny Cash.
School Cash with School Cash Online.
Now, is cashless a brand name? Is that what that was, or
Through the
That's
chair.
what I am.
Cashless was what the prior system was known as, or the acronym.
So we should be referring to the School Cash Online then, instead of cashless, or some other generic way of saying it?
It's through the chair, something like through the board's online payment system, and that way it's fairly generic.
I think that'd be a good idea. Okay. Seeing no further speakers to this one, the next one pulled out was the board report schedule report 17090, page 41 on the board package. I believe it was Trustee L. Harrison who asked for it to be pulled out. Do you have a specific question? So if you could tune in and Trustee L. Harrison. Thank you, Trustee Gervais.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I can use all the help I can get. So my question is with respect to the trustee distribution/representation report. And my question is, will this include looking at the impact of the new wards and redistribution of wards in Oakville? And if that's not contemplated, I was wondering if it could be included. My understanding is that the town of Oakville is adding an additional ward for the upcoming municipal elections. And yeah, I've been curious what that would look like for us as well.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee L. Harrison. Milton has already done that, actually, I believe. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so has Oakville 7 now.
Has Oakville completed it? But anyway, it includes all municipalities and Burlington, the city of Burlington, that the report would that we would bring. I'd probably do it in sections of the report, right? Milton, Oakville, Burlington, Halton Hills.
Thank you. Is that the only question regarding that? Okay. So we're now on to next speaker. I don't think so. They're just information. We're now up to the order paper. Are there any comments or questions on our order paper tonight? And there will be. Oh, sorry. Habit, sorry. Jump down to the ratification items. All right, items, approval of business transacted in private session.
Yes.
Vice Chair Graves.
We do have one item, thank you. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolutions from the Halton District School Board meeting in private session, September 6, 2017, respecting compensation. And I so move.
Do I have a seconder? Trustee Collard. Is there any discussion on the topic? Seeing none. Just a minute. I don't think it's here. Let me see. No. Do, 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 do. All right. So that was moved by Vice Chair Graves, seconded by Trustee Collard. All those in favor? Jumped on. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. So we're now up to action item for tonight, which is our capital priorities, report 17091. Superintendent Bierman and Mr. Renzella, who is not here. So it's Superintendent Bierman all by herself.
Thank you. Through the chair, the information included in the report identifies a process that the ministry has provided for boards to submit their capital priority submissions for the current year. The deadline is September the 8th, so this is time sensitive. I believe there was quite a bit of discussion at the May and June meetings. We were at that time anticipating that the ministry would be providing direction, and that was in fact received on June the 12th. So the report identifies what the ministry identifies as priorities that they will take into consideration when they are looking at making their allocation and their decisions. So that has been provided for information. We've also provided a summary of what has been submitted and approved the last couple submissions, and those are outlined on tables 2, 3. And really the areas or the table that we're looking for direction on is on table 5 on page 48, and that represents what Admin Council has discussed and what we are presenting to the trustees for submission as part of the process. The ministry does ask boards to submit up to 8 priorities. However, history has shown that maybe the first or second priority are the ones that are approved or seriously considered, and we seldom, if ever, have gotten to number 8. So they are listed here. However, the chances of having all of them approved historically has not been very good. So the motion tonight does speak to the report and the priorities that we are recommending, and we are looking for your approval this evening so that we can proceed with submission to the ministry. It's no surprise that Oakville number 2 is our number 1 priority. You understand, and we have explained some of the pressures, enrollment pressures, accommodation pressures in that area, and continue to be problematic for the board. So they are listed as the number 1 priority. And then the second would be renovations to Nelson High School based on the recent motion with respect to the park. And then the following as identified up to number 8. So at this point, I'd just like to turn it over to the trustees for discussion and to see if there's any changes to the submission, and then looking for a motion.
Director Miller.
Yeah, I have one comment. Thank you, Chair Amos. And I'm looking to Superintendent Cullen to maybe weigh in. I think it's important that trustees know the number 1 priority on this list is the Oakville Elementary School. This was also on the list last year, and it was not approved. And I think it's important for trustees to know that even though we've completed for the school year 2018-19, even if this is approved, because of the delay from the ministry in priorities, this would have been submitted in June. We would have found out in October, and Superintendent Cullen could have started his work at that point, assuming it's approved. And I think it's probably a safe bet, I guess. But however, we would not find out about this one until about January, so we will have some challenges in Oakville. And Superintendent Cullen, if you could describe a little bit more about those. Thanks.
Certainly, through the chair, to the trustees, in addition to the change in dates, the ministry has in effect introduced what I would classify as a gap of 1 year in the process. So they've really kind of skipped over a year by shifting the dates. This is the second time it's been done in about the last 10-year window. So I'd say we're sort of 2 years out of 10 where there's virtually been no ability to respond with the delivery of a new school. As the director indicated, we had asked for this school last year to hopefully have it open for the date that's in the report. That was based on the old timelines. These new timelines with the submission in September, so the request in September, again, we're surmising the response won't be received until Christmas or shortly thereafter. And if that's in fact the case, we could not deliver this school for September of 2018, as has been indicated in our previous plan. So the planning department is going to have a struggle to accommodate students. They're going to have to address that issue because the timing would now be sometime in the 18-19 school year at the absolute earliest.
And to follow up, as trustees know, I did send a letter to the ministry in July and have not heard anything back yet. Based on the fact we haven't heard and the priority, I may follow up. because I feel it's so important that we've asked them to relook, and we haven't had a response. So maybe a reminder that we consider this a crucial situation. Also, for clarity, even though this was mentioned that it would be coming forward with the need for approval tonight, I'm going to ask for a motion to waive the rules because it actually wasn't on the agenda in June. So can I have a motion to waive the rules? Trustee Collard, seconded by Trustee Danielle. Is there any discussion on waiving the rules? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. So I will put the motion on the floor before discussion happens. Be it resolved, the Halton District School Board approved the projects as identified in Report 17091 to be submitted to the Ministry of Education as part of the request for capital priorities. Moved by Trustee Oliver, seconded by Trustee Pappen. Discussion. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I was also concerned about the waiving of the rules because this hasn't been before the public before, but it is urgent. So thank you for moving ahead with the waiving of the rules. My concern now is I'm wondering, how will the ministry determine how much money we need for renovations and additions to high schools that currently exist? We've got, when we build a brand new school, they've got some kind of a ballpark to work with. They know what we need. And when we've talked about schools for replacement or rebuild, we've put in a value there. But we have no value for renovations to the 3 high schools in Burlington. And I'm concerned that if we ask for money for the renovations and additions to these schools and don't have anywhere in there an ask, we may not get what we need. And as you know, I am concerned that we won't get enough money to do these things properly. We've talked about purpose-built renovations, and I'm very concerned that we won't get what we really want. And so I would like to understand a little bit better how we are going to be asking for this.
Thank you, Superintendent Cullen.
Through the chair to Trustee Collard, what we based, or what planning has based their proposed submission to the ministry on right now is in fact the PAR reports. If you go back to the PAR reports and look at the parts where we identified a number of different program spaces that will potentially have to move, at the time of the PAR process, we still hadn't gone through the full integration review, so we weren't sure, is it going to both sites, 1 site, 2 sites? So in effect, what we did in the PAR report was itemize prices for each of those spaces. What planning has done at this point is combined all of those to create, I believe it's about an 11 million for the Nelson location and 8 million for the MM, based on the potential PAR outcome that we had anticipated at that time. And I think those 2 numbers are actually contained in the PAR report based on those itemized prices. The other schools that are potentially impacted with Burlington Central High School, and planning has already asked facilities for some cost estimates on some of those elements. So I suspect that they've already created the financial aspects to the submission based on those submissions. Okay.
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair Amos, I know that the General Manager of Planning had met with the ministry around those and had input from the ministry and input, like a reciprocal input back and forth around what would be submitted in terms of that. So,
thank you. Vice Chair Graves.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This is probably not a fair question, so I'll understand if nobody wants to respond. But with regard to Oakville Northeast number 2, what would be the consequences of us beginning on that up to and including putting the shovel in the ground and getting it going so it can open in a timely fashion when we need it, when the students are there, in anticipation of the approval coming in January. I know we've sort of kind of thought about projects before. We've never put a shovel in the ground, but have we? So I guess my comment that I'm fairly comfortable with that. But are there, I mean, is that a severe no-no with the ministry?
Again, through the chair.
Superintendent Cullen.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair to Trustee Graves. The ministry has a fairly strict approval protocol now. So in the past, there was a number of different ways that you could prepare or plan for a project without necessarily going as far as shovel in the ground. That would be a fairly large commitment or gamble that a board may or may not take. The new process has a number of checkpoints in it, milestone approvals from the ministry, beginning with the appointment of architect, a midpoint cost estimate to make sure within budget, approval to go to tender, and then approval of the award of tender. So there's some very specific ones in there that would all precede shovel in the ground. So I would suggest or probably advise the board in that regard that going to that extent is probably too far, but being prepared for a very likely approval, in our opinion, but then again, we thought it was likely last cycle as well, is still doable. There are things that we can do, and I think we have an advantage in that regard because as a board, collectively, we've built a number of schools, so we have a lot of information that way. We know the processes and the procedures, and you may recall what we did at Odenawa was precedent setting as far as the speed and the timing with which that was tackled. That happened with the cooperation of both ministry and municipality and board. So if we get the green light, we can move as quickly as possible, but I suspect the approval is key to going too much farther than we have already.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey-Hope.
Thank you. Sort of following up on Trustee Graves. I seem to recall that we have done a few of those steps in that on the order paper is the approval of the architect for that school, if I remember correctly. We've also, because we said we would take it out of Close the Gap until we got further. So we should have plans, we should have a site, we should have a few other things, but we can't maybe get, as Superintendent Cullen said, too much further. On that note, though, Udenawi is already way above its on-the-ground capacity. My guess is it is probably, although we haven't heard the first day opening. Well, no, I looked it up. I have an idea. We haven't heard exactly what it is there today. I have been talking to, at the leadership conference, I was talking to some of the principals saying, by the way, do you happen to realize that, you're within the 10-kilometer radius of those new houses that I'm driving by every day? And it's not just Trustee Chair Amos that is concerned because there aren't a lot of places to put these students because the other schools in the neighborhoods are already bulging. And so I happen to be in a neighborhood that has a little bit of space, but it would be all portables. So I'm getting concerned that we're going to be, we're not quite likely to be sending them like some other boards have done. A Brampton school got sent to Mississauga one time for a holding school for a year. I'm not suggesting we're going to send them to a Burlington school, but I think we're going to be filling up every school we can find because those children are about to arrive. Those houses are almost done, and there are a lot of them. You drive down Dundas or up 9th line, and it is particularly scary the last couple of weeks how fast that neighborhood is just about done. And Udenawi also is finishing up its own neighborhood, and so it's still getting kids from its own neighborhood, and it's on the other side of Trafalgar, which means they shouldn't actually be going to Udenawi because that's the wrong high school, and so we're causing all kinds of later on grand problems with streams. So I'm just putting my 2 cents in there that we need to figure out how to get this going, and I believe in the magic touch of Superintendent Cullen, but the ground freezes in January, and there's only so much they can do. And so September to February next year looks like it's going to be, I don't even want to guess.
So I'm going to ask for either Superintendent Penny Father or Raddick to speak to this. And okay, Superintendent Penny.
Sure. Through the chair. We have been planning with Okanawa. They're sitting at 1,055 right now. We had 10 portables on site for this fall. There's 2 more heading there right now. So that they'll be at the capacity in those portables. Looking at their organization within the school, they have some room in the classes throughout the whole spiral all the way up, so they can take some more students there. We've been talking to planning and facilities about the possibility of more portables on site. That would need extra permitting, and most of the new schools are designed with a Siamese pipe so that you don't have to do the hydrant. And facilities is just checking into the, and Superintendent Cullen can comment on that if he wishes, but they're checking into, is that in the right location and can we do that? Another consideration with Okanawa is also the parking, because the town is, they're trying to create a walk-to community there, so there was some back and forth about extra parking spots and how that would work. So those things are being worked through. Having said that, east of 6th Line, that whole development that's coming on, the holding school for that is River Oaks, and it does have quite a bit of capacity. And there's another school in the neighborhood just south of there that also has some capacity. So we have been looking ahead, and they would be nearby neighborhoods, and should we need them. And we're also looking at, can we put more portables on? So we're working on that as we speak.
Thank you. Trustee L. Harrison.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is more of a request for next time, I think, given the priority 7 and 8 for these projects that are associated with FCIs. Just looking at the FCIs for all of the schools in our board, there are about 12 of them with in indices over 30%. So I would just be curious to understand how the schools land on our list, given that there's a whole bunch of them kind of in that range. So yeah, they're low priority at this moment. So it's just something I was wondering for a future experiment or investigation submission, yes. And then secondly, with respect to priorities 2 and 4, what are the implications for implementation if those are not selected for funding at this point in time?
Sorry. Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee L. Harrison, I'll start, and Superintendent Bierman can weigh in. As we said during the PAR process, that we do have funds available, but one of the criteria of the board is of the ministry is consolidation to apply for capital priorities. So we apply for capital priorities. If we do not receive this money, it would have no implications in terms of timelines around the implementation of PAR. But we need to, it's a good thing to do, to apply for capital priorities, because this is what the ministry is hoping we do, consolidate. So on. Superintendent.
Through the chair, certainly by submitting these requests, we are hoping and very optimistic that the ministry will approve it. You recall when we present our quarterly financial update on capital. A portion of that does speak to what we call the build capacity. So that represents the portion of funding that we've received in the past that we have not had to put into our renovations or our builds. So currently we're about $9 million. So that money or that allocation sits with the ministry. So I don't want to divulge all of our options, because we were hopeful we will get that funding, but if not, there is a plan that we can share to address the renovations.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
And following on that idea, we may still be able to pull it off, but it would be a Jenga game in that we would be taking money from that has been allocated or has been intended for something else, as in Milton bulge of the high school not coming when we need it, or the Oakville High School not coming when we need it. So if we are following the rules and we've asked for the capital priorities and they said it's for consolidations, then the push is that we want it for the consolidations, because the build capacity is really a not used budget allocation of pupil places that should be used for pupil places in the places where we know we're going to have a problem later. So I don't want to have them saying, oh, by the way, you can do such and such. It's like spending your capital because you can't get the income grant. I mean, it's not sound finance. And so we need to push the fact that, and you said you would fund it, please fund it. And you said we have to build schools when kids show up. Well, the kids are showing up. So all four of those items are, the kids are here. Please give us the money so we can get it done. Because yes, kids can be put on buses to a certain point, but at a certain point, the traffic becomes an issue. And just a
potential puzzle game is going to happen in that north of Dundas area, because right now everything is going to White Oaks. So as things move east, I actually think some of those homes should go to Iroquois Ridge. But do we delay it and let White Oaks take the burden? Because I guess that's what we need to know if the school will get approved. Because if it does get approved, then so it's all contingent on the shell game that's going to happen, I believe. So I'm all for putting our shovels in the ground. I'm quite willing to help if we have to try and start the hole, because I know that Odainawa is over capacity and the people are coming every day, and I'm not sure where we're going to put them. We might lose our library, we might lose our gym, and that's not something that we want to see. And I'm not sure how we can pressure the ministry other than to invite them down to maybe to the area again. So anyways, go ahead.
I just make one comment about contingencies or figuring out where to put kids when they're full. We're fortunate, or maybe unfortunate, that we've had lots of experience in Milton in trying to figure this out, because as we all know, Milton has grown and grown and grown very quickly, and there's been lots of movement of students in different places, and we really want to avoid what happened in some cases in Milton, where kids were moved 2, 3, 4 times in some cases. But of course, this has to, the building has to keep pace with the houses, and this is the challenge. So.
I'm also really concerned that the ministry doesn't understand our pressures, because we're the only really true growth board in the region, and the other schools who are applying may not have the pressures that we have. Anyways, seeing no further comments, all those in favor? Yes. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we're now up to one of the highlights of our board meeting, our student trustee reports. Trustees Metropolitansky and Trustee Mansour.
Thank you. Muktasad and I are really excited for this year. It's going to be a good year. I'm really thankful that personally I had the opportunity to be with the board last year as well. I think I have a better understanding now of how the board works and the opportunities for improving the integration of student voice. One thing that we're really looking forward to this year is an opportunity that Associate Director Bogue set up for us, which is we're going to have 2 staff advisors who will help us with Senate and messaging to schools directly, which we're really looking forward to working with them as well as our trustee mentors. So that's going to be awesome. Over the summer, we've thought of some overarching goals for the year, as well as some more specific initiatives we'd be interested in exploring during this school year. So we'll just go over our goals and kind of the specific things we've already started working on because the year is going to get busy very quickly, as we already know. So the 2 major goals that we've thought of, the first one is we want to improve the connection between Student Senate and the student body, obviously because they are our main liaison with the student body, the 60,000 plus students of the HDSB. What does that mean specifically? The first thing that we've identified is we'd like to improve awareness of the student trustee and the student senate position. From our experience, some students don't know that the Halton District School Board exists. If they know that the board exists, they don't know that there is a board of trustees. They most certainly don't know that there is a student trustee position, and they most certainly don't know that there's a student senate position that is representing them. And that's a huge problem because we're doing really great work as a board to represent them, but the students just don't know what we're doing and that they have an opportunity to provide input. So today, actually, we had a meeting with the communications department, and we're looking to create a video, which is a message from students directly to students and to get it out to as many students as possible. Basically, the key messaging is that the board cares about student voice and that there are concrete mechanisms by which students can provide input, some of which are their student trustees and having contact information with us, their student senators, all of those sorts of resources being available to them. And we're starting to work on that with the communications team. We also plan to work extensively with the Student Senate this year to ensure that they're acting as liaisons within their own school. Some schools do a really great job of this, like their student senators literally sit on the student council, but we want to do more to ensure that they're engaging with the student body and the student council within those schools. We'd also like to create a president's council this year, which is having the school presidents meet. Perhaps it could be an hour before the student senate meeting, so also once a month. And that way we're getting information directly to student councils, because student senators shouldn't all necessarily have to be from their student council. We just want diverse perspectives from any student, regardless of whether or not they're in a leadership position within their school. So that's the first broad goal that we have. The second broad goal is improving the integration of the student perspective at the board level. The first thing under this is ensuring that trustees are aware of and can contact their senators. So last year we heard some feedback that trustees would like to know who the senators are from their schools. So we're going to be on creating that list for you as soon as we have our first Senate meeting, so that if there are students, for example, that contact you, or parents or community members who are like, who is my school representative on the Student Senate, we'll have a list of who your representatives are and their email addresses. That creates accountability for those representatives as well. Another idea that we have in terms of improving student input on the board level is to have student representation on the board level committees, because we recognize that there is a lot of work that's done beyond these board meetings themselves. So obviously it's not applicable to all committees, but there are committees that directly overlap with issues that really affect students. So we did a bit of work last year with like the French Curriculum Advisory Committee. So that would be one that we could look at. The Accessibility Committee, the Equity and Inclusive Education Committee, the Eco-Learning Partnership, Mental Health. So they exist, but we think that there needs to be a form of student representation, or at least a way for student representatives, not just the trustees, but perhaps senators, to work with those committees. We're not sure yet what the logistics of that would be, because we know that those committees often meet during the day, but even just ensuring that some of those meetings, there's some form of student representation and a connection between students and the people making decisions within those committees, we think is really important.
All right. So I guess this is my first student trustee report. So I'm just very briefly going to go over what specifically we've done so far in our 2 weeks working on the 2017-2018 school year. The first thing we did was we met with Director Miller and Manager Gortmaker towards the end of the summer, just to revise the student trustee election policy, just to make it more inclusive and more modernized, looking into online voting, and just making it so that more people will be able to have an input on who the student trustees are across our board. We've also started working on student senate. So we have some tentative dates that need approval. We also have a letter drafted for our principals, which will be sent out once we have our dates approved. We've noticed over the past couple of years, there are a lot of schools that do not often send senators. We've compiled a list of those schools, and we'll be working to ensure that those schools who do not usually send senators also have representation on our Senate, so that it is a more inclusive body of representatives. As for our next steps, we would like to meet with our staff advisors and our and our trustee mentors to discuss ideas. For example, the ideas we have as to how we want to encourage more representation from schools that do not send senators. Also, we would like to reach out to superintendents responsible for the committees, as Dasha previously mentioned, so we can get students to start working with committees. Yeah, that's it. Thanks so much.
Director Miller.
I just, quick comment, Chair Amos. Well done, Trustee Mansour, and of course, Metro Polanski, your first one. Not your first one. You've delivered hundreds of speeches. But I also want to thank both student trustees for the work around the student trustee elections. There's some significant changes which are really, I think, advantageous and supportive of the students in this board. We will be sending those changes and that to the trustee mentors for comments before publishing them with all trustees for, I think it's Trustee Pappen and Trustee Daniele for you to weigh in on it and give your opinions and so on, and your views, and then we'll get that to all trustees. But it's very good work, and you know we also have to thank Zaid as well, because Zaid was involved at the beginning of the process. So thanks.
Thank you. And I also wanted to let you know I did write the letter asking for support to the Premier regarding allowing trustees to, or student trustees to either put forth a motion with a trustee, elected trustee as a seconder, or as a or for you to be a seconder. And I did just receive this week a reply from the Premier thanking me for the letter and has referred it to the Minister of Education. So anyways, as soon as I can get my copier working, which has been a 10-week plan, I will scan it and send it out, but I just wanted to let you know I had received a reply from the Premier. So
thank you for writing that. We appreciate it.
I think it's important because it is part of a part of your student voice, and that's what we're trying to represent as well. So, is there any other comments or questions for our student trustees? Trustee Gerbetz.
Thank you for your student trustee report. As a trustee, I would be happy to promote student senators, like the concept of having student senators to the schools. And I was just wondering, is there a standard way that a student can become a student senator, or is it different in every school?
We really leave it up to the schools to determine it, and it's outlined in the letter that we send out to principals. There aren't very specific considerations. Ideally, what we'd like to happen is the school would put out an announcement saying, look, anybody who wants to be a student senator, like speak with a principal, or speak with, if there's a teacher who's in charge of it, so the teacher who runs the student council activities, for example, and then there'll be discussions and they'll select from there, but we don't really follow through to see how each school does it. That's our ideal process, though.
Thank you. Trustee Daniele.
Thank you. Two comments. I remember several years ago when we were having trouble getting student trustees, particularly from the north, where the student trustees and I took a road trip and asked to speak at the various student assemblies so that the student trustee could speak directly to the students in the assemblies. That might be something you might want to consider, and I'd be happy to help coordinate any logistics of that if you need it. And I also wondered if you could send us the tentative list of dates, just so that we can tentatively put them in our schedules, and recognizing that they may change. But given how busy this board gets, how quickly it gets busy, it's better for us to put the time aside now when we can. And great first report, Trustee Mansour.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And seeing no further comments or questions, thank you very much for your report tonight. And you've done a lot, seeing school only started yesterday. All right. So we're now up to the action items for September the 20th, the resolution for corporate credit card services, report 17092, Superintendent Bierman, page 49 of your board package. Welcome back, Superintendent Bierman.
Thank you. Through the chair, over the past year, as part of the work updating the procurement policy, we've had quite an extensive review of some of our activities in the schools, and many of the schools have very low dollar purchases. So what we are wanting to do is to pilot the expansion of a purchasing card. And in order to proceed with that, we have, through the OECM, the Ontario Education Collaborative Marketplace, been able to piggyback on a clause to have BMO as a provider for the credit card, for the purchasing card. In order to proceed with that, we have to have a motion from the trustees as listed, detailed on the page, that allows us to proceed through BMO to obtain credit services. And once that is approved, then we're going to be starting our pilot with our schools to introduce to elementary schools and to expand to secondary schools. So at this point, the pilot will probably be maybe 4 elementary and 2 secondary, to ensure that we have an opportunity to work with the schools to see what works, what processes and procedures we need to put into place to assist them. And then based on those results, we'll look at expansion of the pilot. However, again, in order to proceed with that, we have to have this motion by the trustees to obtain the credit facilities.
So is there any urgency to this, that we should waive the rules so that you could start your pilot sooner than later?
Through the chair, the pilot is scheduled tentatively for mid-October, so delaying it or having the motion approved September 20th should not be problematic.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Trustee Harvey-Hope.
Thank you. For the record, I'm in favor of this kind of an idea because small dollar items are really a pain to reimburse, etc. And it gives you another level of paperwork that trail. What I'm, I guess, curious about is the second paragraph talks about the board agreeing to a draft that we haven't seen, and then allowing sole discretion to change it. So I would at least be more comfortable giving the chair and probably the superintendent of business sole discretion to amend the agreement if I'd even seen the draft in the first place. So I'm wondering whether or not it could be circulated between now and the 20th. But that's sort of just an idea of, you were saying it's only 6 schools, so not a lot of money at $1,000 per card. So it's not a big risk, but if you were to multiply it to 107 schools times 2 or 3 people per school, plus all the corporate departments, depending on what's in that agreement, that, when you scale it up, I just would, seeing as how it says we looked at it to approve the draft and we don't have the draft, I'd maybe like to see the draft.
Thank you. Trustee Reynolds.
Through the chair, I agree with Trustee Harvey-Hope. I really like this idea. I think the paper trail component is very valuable, especially when people are going out and purchasing little things. It makes it so much easier. There's documentation. My question is actually, does this replace the petty cash? Is this the intention of the use of the credit card?
Through the chair, currently schools are using petty cash. Petty cash is very labor intensive. What has been successful in other boards that have used the P card is they have been been able to eliminate virtually all of petty cash.
Follow up, or you done? Thank you. Seeing no further comments or questions to this item, it will come back on September the 20th for voting. Thank you very much, Superintendent Bierman. Okay, So we're now up to, we have no information items for tonight. Do we have any notices of motion? Seeing none, we're up to the director's report. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Amos. I have a few items tonight, but actually they're mostly from superintendents around the board, around the table. I'll start with an update on capital projects from this summer, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Cullen.
Thank you, Chair Miller. Director Miller. Everybody's getting new titles tonight.
Promotion.
Some of them are, some of them aren't. We have had, I think I've said this leading up to this summer, but I think we've just experienced the busiest weekend, busiest summer, call it what you will, that we've seen in the history of the Halton Board. The projects that were tackled and the way in which they had to be tackled because of the multiple parts of them meant lots of preparation time, more money spent on schools than we've seen in several years, which is a good thing. Time restrictions, labor restrictions, material restrictions all came into play. However, the staff involved both from facilities and at the school level around making accommodations to get access to the sites and get workers on and off sites was tremendous. Everybody did an amazing job. So we had a number of sites literally last week that we thought were going to be questionable as to whether or not they would actually be able to open, and they pulled off a number of different miracles literally in some of the sites that we had. I won't go into the details on those ones, but I'll talk about the good highlights. Let's start with Martin Street, which has been sitting idle and ready since probably June. So the replacement school for Martin Street, usually new schools are a pressure point. Well, in this particular case, because of timing, the new school was actually one of the earliest of our projects that was ready and was in a great state for the staff and students to get into at the start of the school year. So that was a great thing. If you haven't had the opportunity to see it, and maybe I'll have some photos of it shortly, to see the facade of the old school with a brand new school attached to it is a really nice combination. So I think we're really proud of the way that one turned out. The addition at Craig Kilberger is underway. It's framed. It's not complete. It's literally a very active construction site right now and will continue to be that until probably Christmas time, so we're ready for semester 2. All of the schools are aware of the status of projects, so that's part of the timetable and plan, and accommodations on site have been great. All of the portables were in place. I believe there was about 36 had to be moved in various areas across the system. All hooked up, connected. There's a few sites where we needed some final connections done into this week, and some are still being worked on, but technically they're there with roofs and stairs and the ability for staff and students to use them, so they were all in place. Now, we do have a second round of portable requests coming in because of the actual enrollments at a few sites, so you may be hearing schools commenting about the fact that they've either asked for or are expecting another portable. We're working on that second list as we speak, and we'll have different delivery dates pending the site specifics on each of those. The work that was done this year also included the Close the Gap initiative. So a lot of the electrical upgrades, prepping for the air conditioning, in fact, some of the air conditioning enhancements that were going in. A lot of the main systems are in, but there's still some of the unitary systems to go into classroom spaces that will be done either evenings or weekends. A bunch of window work was scheduled around the system. No windows were available, so early in the process we had made arrangements to have the window installments actually occur during the school year. So they'll actually be occurring from September on, probably one classroom per night kind of thing. And again, arrangements on a site-by-site basis have been made to do that. But it was a particularly large volume and a number of sites impacted this year, and staff are to be commended in every way we can for what they pulled off. Happy to take any specific questions. If I have details on the site, because there were so many, I have to tell you, it stretched my memory, and I don't know if I got them all. So,
thank you. Trustee L. Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. My question and comment isn't about a specific site. I can appreciate just driving around Southwest Oakville, the amount and volume of work that's been undertaken. So I was wondering if there's anywhere a list of all that work, because I really feel like it's a good news story. The principal of Eastview in his first day blog kind of announced the good news of all of the work that had been done, because oftentimes we hear about the state of disrepair of some of our particularly older facilities. So I'm wondering about crafting this into, a good news story. And secondly, a thanks to our neighbors who put up with ongoing construction sites through Labor Day weekend and on weekends as we hammer down to get ready for the school year. So there's really two sides of it. Firstly, the good news piece of this, and secondly, the thanks to our neighbors as well. So I wonder if there's any kind of value in communicating those pieces.
If I may, I can take the first. There definitely is a list. We have an Excel spreadsheet that shows site by site which projects were done and started those. So there is a summary list of all of the project work. And the director and I've already talked about the good news story part, because it's this is a very big and beneficial thing to schools for sure.
Through Chair Amos, your question kind of, thank you for your question, because Jerry and I, Superintendent Cullen and I, and other superintendents have been talking about, let's get those good news out there. So we are planning on doing that. I like your idea about thanking the neighbors though. And I don't know how far we extend it, but, I think it's a great idea for people to know that we appreciate that their housing or we're close. So we will look into how we do that. I think that's an excellent suggestion. And I'm looking at Superintendent Etoff. I think we could develop some communication to put into some flyers into some houses and saying, hey, thanks a lot. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
And on that note, I haven't heard from this particular neighbor yet, but I know at least one lady that is going to be very happy that we removed a portable. Was blocking her view that she was upset about last year and it got removed. So that's one good one. Information taken, it was noted, and as soon as it could be rectified, it was done. So thank you very much to Superintendent Cullen for that. Also, going forward, yes, to thank the neighbors for dealing with all the stuff that happened this summer, but also looking forward to next June when that report comes out that says, by the way, we're going to be doing this, 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 and this. One, giving trustees a heads up. The information is often available, but not necessarily in a format that is very aware of what's going to happen. And two, pre-warning the people that are the neighbors that are about to have, in some cases, some extensive stuff happen around them. Because of the fact that the administrators are often not on site, trustees are often the ones that will get the call from the neighbor saying, by the way, did you know that such and such is happening or whatever, or if you see something unusual happening. So, I'm following up on, some of the things that happen. I usually do a tour of all the places so I know where all the portables, just in case somebody says, oh, by the way, do you know that such and such has happened? So some sites, they look really good where they put them, and other ones I'm expecting some comments. So again, it's just we're getting better as we go along, but there's always a few little tweaks that we can do.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Thank you through the chair to Superintendent Cullen. I wanted to say I'm really excited to get into the Halton Hills schools. 14 out of the 15 schools had work done on them this summer, and I'm going to be really excited to see all the progress. And in addition to that, I know the folks in the Acton community are really looking forward to the development of that new bridge, bridging into Robert Little across from one of the streets. So I'm really, really pleased about that. I had an idea. Often when I pass schools in the summertime, there's a frozen sign in the front of the school. They're electronic signs, or they're signs where they change the letters, that just has that message that is posted at the end of June but stays dormant for the rest of the summer. And I think maybe taking on the challenge of maybe changing some of those signs during the summer to say, neighbors, we're thanking you now for any inconveniences you may be experiencing because of our construction. Anyway, just a thought, because those signs don't change very often, if at all, during the summer. It may be a way of reaching out to the community.
Thank you. I have a question. I know with the number of portables that we have in our system and the need that seems to be there, do we have enough portables or, and how are we coping if we don't?
To the chair, that's a difficult question. So this year, we did in fact lease some additional portables to add to our own inventory. We've done that over the past couple of years as the numbers have grown and the need has increased. And each time we do that, planning does a review of what might be available in our current inventory to be released from schools before they would determine the net add. So there's a number of the portables. I think if I recall correctly, 36 were moved around the system, and I think it was 5 or 6 that we leased to add into that. So 30 of them were existing owned board property, and 6 were added to that mix. That's fairly typical. Earlier in the year, we had anticipated none were going to be available. There was a real run on portables as far as need went, and a shortage of them available across the province, quite frankly. So we went ahead and ordered some in advance of the final numbers, which turned out to work out very close to our actual need. We're hoping that next year the market is kind of stabilized. We think this was a particularly high demand year with a real shortage. Created a concern, but didn't cause a concern for us because we pre-ordered those 6 and had 30 available in the system to move around.
So there was enough for the 2 that need to go to Odainawi at this point, too?
At this point, I believe planning has identified options for us to find those portables.
Okay.
The issue, if I may be specific on Odainawi, as you know, is the pressure point for parking. Along with all of the other things. So it's not so much the portable or its location, it's all of the other requirements that have to go along with it to place it. And we have a very interesting pressure point up there on parking.
I know. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none. All right. Thank you very much for this report.
I got more.
And you've got more?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Your microphone. Thank you, Chair Amos. I'm going to turn it over to Associate Director Bogue in a second to give you all an update on transportation. But before I do, I want to publicly thank General Manager Lacroix of HSTS and Communications Manager Marnie Denton. We got out early on this in June, tweeting out that we may have some challenges and identified a bunch of routes without drivers and so on, and all those challenges. And great credit to General Manager Lacroix for her and her department working so hard with the bus companies to get more drivers and do all those other things, that the scenario that we saw in June did not materialize. We still have some issues, of course, and Associate Director Bogue will say that. And but we had far less issues and fewer problems than we were looking at when we looked at it at the end of June. And I also want to applaud Karen Lacroix for her media savvy and her many performances in many media outlets. So I'll turn it over to Associate Director Bogue.
Thanks, Director Miller, and through you, Madam Chair, to trustees. I'd also like to thank our local media. And I know Karen Lacroix had several interviews with media, but our local media actually went out to open houses early in the spring as well, and also did some articles which just helped raise the awareness out there. And in fact, raising that awareness created quite a bit of interest around potential drivers, and so lots more applications came in. So as folks know, this is a bigger issue than Halton. It's not fixed here for sure, but last June we had something in the neighborhood of 65 open routes. We're down to around 34-ish as of today. I'm in touch with Ms. Lacroix on a daily basis. The first day actually wasn't perfect, but it was much better than last year, and today was better than yesterday. So Though there are certainly issues there, we're in a better place than we were a year ago. In fact, over the last couple of years, there are normal startup issues each fall, and so what Karen is trying to do right now is determine where are the issues related to bus driver shortage versus the normal startup issues, which are congestion around school parking lots as we get parents and other traffic sorted out, and mechanical issues with buses, which is a fall issue as well after they've sat all summer. And that was a learning for me. They've sat all summer, and then even though they've been out on test runs and those kinds of things, there have been a number of those, and that is normal fall, things that happen in the fall. HSTS is working very hard, still in a recruitment mode. There's 24 drivers in training currently right now. Some ready for road testing immediately, and others sort of earlier on in their training. Again, lots of interest because of the media. We've got applications coming in, so there's future potential drivers in the queue. Some glitches with late routes not being posted on the HSTS website, and we did a lot of work on that last year to ensure that as we were dealing with these late busing challenges, to make sure that our parents were aware. And so we had a couple of glitches early on, and there's been communication to the bus companies that we recognize we're all working together on this, but if you've got a bus that's running late, we got to get it on the HSTS website so our families are aware. So that communication has occurred. Main areas that we're still having challenges with are Oakville, a little bit in Burlington and Milton. Halton Hills seems to be in pretty good shape up in the hills there. And we'll keep you posted. I'm in touch with Karen on a daily basis, and we'll provide more information to trustees as it comes.
Thank you. Comments and questions for the Associate Director. Trustee Gerbens.
Thank you for your comments. I'm glad that things are getting better. I did hear some stuff about yesterday, and it was mostly to do with broken down buses and not great communication with regards to posting, because especially since some of the principals were very proactive in asking parents to sign up for those alerts and to check the websites, and then still that information did not get to them. And so it erodes confidence in the system when that sort of thing happens. The other thing I get a bit concerned about is, when, and this was last year, but if we do have some routes that are consistently late, and especially in the afternoon, actually, then this is more of a concern for our staff, that we're asking them to stay late, quite late. And should we have, if there is something consistent going on, is there some way we could have some sort of student supervisor available for those schools that are consistently late?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Trustee Gerbens, that's a great suggestion. In fact, we started to talk about that last year when we were in the midst of all of this as well. And in fact, did put out some offers for some additional support for supervision to some schools. So we will have that conversation again this year. We're really looking at the first couple of weeks to see how things settle out, but most definitely if we've got ongoing challenges. I know particularly at one of your schools, there was administrators there till after 5 o'clock, and we certainly don't want buses picking up kids at 5 o'clock, but even when they're later than the normal supervision time, it's something for us to take into consideration. So I'll take that back.
Thank you. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I had a couple of communications from with some different opinions or points of view on the issue, but I wanted to start with the special education students and those who take transportation in order to get to school. If we could pay particular attention to ensuring that the routes of students who are going to a special placement are running as smoothly as possible, it would be very much appreciated. I received a number of emails and phone calls yesterday from parents who were distressed that their children were either arriving to school late or getting home very late. One was as late as 5:30 getting home. So this was concerning, especially for a student who's in a self-contained placement. The other concern that was raised to me was the fact that with the buses, with our inability to provide enough drivers for the buses, many parents were concerned about potential job loss because they're staying with their children at the bus stop, or they're having to drive their children to school, and pointedly wanted to know what we are doing to circumvent this so that it won't happen again this year. And I did describe all of the things that we're doing. But one of the things that I know that we've talked about for many years that's really never taken off as well as it might is using municipal transportation for our high school students. And I'm hoping that we are actively pursuing that this year, because if we can get some of our secondary students on municipal buses, then that frees up a lot of the school buses for our littlest ones. Thanks.
Thanks for those comments, Trustee Collard. Those make a lot of sense. I know the special ed issue is on HSTS's radar. Unfortunately, one of the challenges we have right now is many of the routes that are uncovered are the smaller buses, and that's just the nature of the challenge, I think, in covering off all those routes. But certainly that communication around those families, and I know they're making a concerted effort to ensure that the buses are on time. There is some conversation around taxis for kids as a way to cover off some routes, but that poses some other challenges for students with special education needs as well. But that's something that may be an option. In terms of the certainly we understand the issues around parents and the inconvenience. I'm not sure what to suggest there. Again, this is bigger than Halton. This is right across the board. We're very aware of that, and so we keep that in the forefront. On the bus ticket issue, we are starting off this year, and our SHISM students are in some communities are on bus passes. We've started off that way, so that's hopefully created a little bit of help around easing the pressure with some of the buses. Could we do more? Potentially, and that may be something that we have to talk about if things don't settle down this year. I mean, we could be looking at larger numbers of kids potentially with bus passes, but we'd want to do the cost analysis on that, and so we'd work with HSTS on that as well.
Trustee Harvey-Hope.
Thank you for all of your comments to date. One of the things that I don't know that gets mentioned often enough is that because our secondary students aren't using transit, those places that have school specials that complement the school bus routes, we don't necessarily have enough students taking the school specials because of the complementary bus routes that's in the neighborhood. And then this transit cuts the school special, or cuts the non-school special route that serves the same neighborhood. And in particular, Ward 3, the Oakville Transit, I know last year, cut the route for students to get to school, particularly in the middle of the day, for students with, first period spare or last period spare and want to get home to their job or whatever, with no discussion with the Halton District School Board. And so the school special is basically running at exactly the same time as the bus, and there's no other transit opportunities. If we were to take the same number of students that we now send on a yellow bus and put them on a municipal transit in the morning, they would have more than enough supply to maintain that old route once or twice more during the day, because they would have overflowed buses in the morning, and then the capacity, the economic stability to run maybe one in the middle of the day for students to get home. So, it might be a win-win in that we'd also be suggesting to our secondary students that transit's not a bad thing. Now, most of the universities are giving bus passes included even for children, students that are living on campus and they, may or may not ever think they need a bus, they're including it in their student fees to say, listen, this is transit, take it, and suggesting it. Because there's a lot of students that honestly have probably never been on transit before they graduate high school. And, it probably wouldn't hurt to do some things. And especially in those particular routes that municipal transit is like, running parallel, and we could easily probably give us some maneuverability in other places that don't have municipal transit.
I'd like to comment on that. Just very quickly, through you, Chair Amos. We have looked at bus passes in the past, and we do provide bus passes. We've been providing them for a long time. They generally were confined to students who had economic challenges, families like that. I think trustees need to be aware, though, that it is more costly going on public transit than it is on the school buses. So there would be a cost attached to getting those bus passes to all those students. And the other issue is the conversations with the local municipalities, let's put it that way, are long and arduous around those processes, as we've experienced many times. And you even identified one where a school special was stopped without conversation. So it's something that we continue to explore, and I know Associate Director Bogue and Superintendent Bierman and General Manager Lacroix will continue to explore, but it's not without its challenges, the largest one being cost, of course. So.
Thank you. Trustee Gerbens.
Thank you, Chair Amos. Along the same lines, I think that with regards to cost, if we are exponentially increasing the ridership on these municipal transportation, we have bargaining power there. And I already know one of the counselors in Burlington is interested in getting students on the bus. So I think there are allies available at the municipalities. And we already know recently articles about Kingston. That's what they use for their high school students is the municipal bus system, and I'm sure that there's other places that do as well. And I think that it opens the door for flexibility for students to be able to attend school at their various times or stay late to be able to participate in clubs and sports. It allows us to perhaps even look at adjusting our bell times for our secondary schools, because we won't necessarily be locked in to the HSTS. They determine our bell times. Our buses determine our bell times, and it really should not be that way. So I think that there's a lot of issues to look at this. I wouldn't mind being part of a committee looking at this. If anybody, I don't know how we can start a committee. Perhaps we can make this something at transportation, talking to Trustee Pappen at Committee of the Whole, because I think we should get moving on this. We've been talking, some of us have been talking about this for a little while, and I think that we need to have some action on exploring this further with the various municipalities.
Director Miller.
Through you, Chair Amos, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting we don't explore this, but as a superintendent who was appointed in 2009 and was given that mandate to kind of look at that in the town of Oakville, I can tell you we've had many conversations, and they're difficult conversations, difficult commitments, and it extended. I know Superintendent Veerman's predecessor, Superintendent Parfenak, spent significant time in getting a school special from a part in Oakville to go to Oakville Trafalgar High School that lasted for a time and then didn't. I guess I'm just saying it's something that we continue to look at. We always look at it. but I caution that it's not the panacea that it appears, because we have to have conversations with the town of Oakville, the city of Burlington, the town of Milton. In Halton Hills, there is no public transit, and they all have different ways of operating and all that. And at some point, it's a cost-benefit analysis. How much time are we going to throw into this and pay more, which is what we've had. That's not to say the work doesn't get carried on. I know Karen is constantly talking to them about that and doing this. So it's not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we don't do it. It's just, it's more a caution of the challenges of doing it.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, Director Miller.
I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Etoff to comment on Indigenous flags and the. I can't remember if it was a motion, Trustee. It was a motion Trustee Collard brought to the board, and he's just going to talk about a little bit about that.
Sure, just as an update to the board, you remember back in June when we brought our Truth and Reconciliation report to the board, there was a motion by Trustee Collard, and it was seconded by Trustee L. Harrison and carried unanimously for us to look at the whole process of flying Indigenous flags across the Halton District School Board, and really look deeply about and under what situations and what contexts and how to honor our various different partners across our Indigenous communities. So we have there is the first Indigenous Advisory Council meeting that is coming up in the next few weeks, and we hope to have it as part of the discussion to begin some of the discussion. Obviously, we have a number of leads within our board as well, Tammy Hardwick, as well as a very close relationship with Elder Steve Paquette, Knowledge Keeper. So we'll be consulting with them as well and bringing something forward. We hope for, I think it's the November 13th board meeting is the timeline that we're looking at having something to present to the board.
Thank you. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Amos, and I hope these are somewhat quickie items that I've got. I don't know if any of you get the Professionally Speaking magazine from the Ontario College of Teachers. Very good write-up on one of our principals who was a former principal of M.M. Robinson and will do a crack-up job at Derry Allen. So if you haven't got it, Dale will send it out, but I think it should be kind of entered into the public domain.
I didn't get it because you stole it.
No, because there's a write-up on Andrea Taylor, a former principal who was not principal. What is it? Principals what's the name of those awards? Outstanding Principals of Canada. She was a recipient last year, and we're proud of the work that all of our administrators do. But we're especially proud of Andrea at this moment, and it's a good article. It's a very good article, and she deserves that. So if you haven't read it, get a chance, and Dale can send it out again in case you haven't received it. The next one is we will review the order paper September 20th. We'll review all the items on there. And you'll have to ask if you have a question around this to Superintendent Truffin. YouTube versus Ustream for video. I'll let him speak because you haven't heard him enough.
Because you don't know what that means. Some of you have already noticed because I've gotten some emails that we are actually streaming on YouTube now. Effectively, we started tonight. We didn't want to give you advance notice because we were hoping it would work. Of course, it's going to work. But yeah, we're transitioning to our YouTube channel. We have a very vibrant, active YouTube channel, both a private one and a public one. This is on our public YouTube channel, and there's some cost savings, but that's really not really why we did it. You know, the quality of the YouTube channel is a little sharper from Ustream, and we really think that this is a good way to archive and for parents who want to go back or community members who want to go back or superintendents who want to go back and watch the board meeting, You just go to YouTube channel and you can probably find the video much easier. And there's really no gap. And I'll look for a nodding back there. Like once this meeting's over, the video is on our channel. Good nod. Where we used to have a 24-hour delay. So we think this is a good positive move, transitioning from Ustream. And the old videos from past board meetings will still be on the board's website. Those are on our servers. But from here on in, the videos, both the board meetings and SEAC meetings, will be on our YouTube channel. I hope that I would be happy to answer any questions if you may have them. You're going to be seeing Mr. Kevin and Summer quite often, and I would like to actually introduce Kevin Rapazzo, Summer Sweetman, you'll be seeing them at the board meetings, and acknowledgement, and unfortunately Ryan's not here, but acknowledgement to Mike, who has been here for the last couple of years as well. They work really hard behind the scenes, making sure that we're good to go. So thanks, Mike. And welcome, Summer and Kevin. Happy to take any questions.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you. I'm asking you actually maybe to confirm an assumption I have. I know under the old system, we were limited to the number of people who could be watching at any given time, and I'm wondering if that's the same with this system. And then my second question would be to my fellow trustees. I noticed that there are 7 watching now, and I'm wondering how many of them are us.
To answer your first question, we weren't necessarily limited, Trustee Daniele, but the more viewers there were, the more expensive it was. And we're really looking forward to having anywhere from 25 to 100,000 people watching YouTube, and it won't cost us a penny. So, and then your other question, yeah, I'm watching right now. I'm one.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you very much, very, very much for getting SEAC on the channel as well. I know that the SEAC will welcome this very much, and I'm very pleased to see that it's come together this quickly.
Mark had a lot to do with that as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Trustee Gavens.
Well, I love this move because you can subscribe to it so that when we're about to go online, you can set it up so there's a notification that comes out to people. So if we happen to be a few minutes late, which we're not supposed to be, out of private session, people aren't sitting there staring at it will be starting soon thing if they're going to watch live. And I love how it comes on right after, and it's so easy. We can share it easily on social media, and it's just a better system. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Miller.
Thank you for your patience this evening. It's been an awful long director's report, but
Just before you go, we need a motion to extend. Trustee L. Harrison, seconded by Trustee Harvey Hope. It's on the floor. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I will be supporting this motion, as I suspect we all were, but I would ask if we could recognize that we are going past 10, and the people around the outside circle of this horseshoe have been at their desks probably since 8 this morning, and we'll be back at it at 8 this morning, and we still do need to go back into private session. So I would ask my colleagues that going forward, if we could look for brevity in what we are saying and what we are doing, and start the year off right and getting meetings under control and not keeping our staff here to all hours of the night, because that's a huge concern for me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else like to speak to it? Seeing not. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Continue, Director Miller.
Anybody have any ailments that you want me to diagnose? Thank you, Chair Amos. The last item is just a bit of an innovation in the past. Generally in private session, in fact, almost exclusively in private session, you get updates from labor updates and so on and that. One thing we're going to try to do this year, as you know, there are HSPA, the Halton Secondary Principals Association, and HEPA, the Halton Elementary Principals Association, and they meet once a month. They actually have an exec meeting and then a monthly meeting. We will give you a couple of times a year a little bit of update on the comings and goings and the types of items that they're discussing at HSPA and HEPA. Be just a couple of times a year, but it's good to know what the school leaders are talking about and so on. We'll figure out the format. Maybe we invite them to actually do it. So that'll be coming. And that's it for the report.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Trustee Daniele. In a moment. Okay, so we're now up to communications from the chair. I don't have a lot other than to say I hope everyone had a wonderful summer and feels recharged and excited, and I look forward to hearing everybody's what I did this summer stories. And I wanted to share that the HDSB Reads program will be starting in the schools, and the kindergarten to grade 6, I believe, will be reading When We're Alone, and the 6 to 12s will be reading The Secret Path. And if you've never read The Secret Path, it is a very moving book. So I just wanted to share that and to thank everyone for all the hard work that they did put in when they were here in the summer. And because I know a lot of things did happen over the course of the time. And I would like to thank all those involved in the leadership conference because it was a very well-run event and a lot of great learning happened there. So is this about me? Trustee Harvey Hope.
Yes, quickly, just wondered whether or not when we make a motion for the chair to write a letter, that if perhaps maybe the letter that you write actually can make it into the public realm. I know we've had this conversation before, and some letters you get to and from, et cetera, but I'm just wondering whether we can put that on some kind of to discuss, because we'll have a motion to write a letter, and then you'll say verbally it got written, but we don't often get it into the public realm or into our package that says, yes, this is the letter the chair wrote.
Well, maybe that's a topic that can go to Committee of the Whole. Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, we are now up to, just a minute, I gotta reset. Now, okay, now you can go. Committee reports. I'm not sure why I came up, but anyways, okay, Trustee Gray.
Okay, thank you very much through the chair. I have a committee report on behalf of the Inspire Committee that had a meeting yesterday. It was decided that an annual report will come forward at the next board meeting. Secondly, that yesterday the committee members took a review on improving and providing further clarity on the Inspire Awards and addressing issues or areas that came up last year. The first awards nominations will appear in the first October board meeting, and that will recognize the July-August nominations that we received. Also, finally, on a marketing point of view, reminder to all trustees to continue to promote our award, and that is that in any school visit that you have, or family of school presentation that you make, or any visit to a school council or super council, please be sure to mention the Inspire Awards and certainly tweet and use Facebook to promote it. Finally, we are also talking about, from our marketing point of view, of having a presence at the upcoming PIC conference, and so we're excited for that opportunity to really reach out to our community. And finally, lastly, we met Heather Francie from the Communications Department on her first day of work yesterday, and we will be sending to her an updated award list so that she can help us in our marketing efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Gray. Trustee Pappen.
Thank you. Through the chair, Principal Mary Marshall, the new lead for the Accessibility Coordinating Committee, is in the process of setting our accessibility coordinating meetings for the next year. The meetings will continue to be on Thursday morning, 9 to 11 a.m. in the trustee boardroom, and we normally meet 3 to 4 times a month. We're also looking for a SEAC rep.
Thank you. Vice Chair Graves.
committee of the whole next week will be our planning meeting for the year. So we'll have a look at our mission, vision, values, and goals from our multi-year plan, and have a look at our year and what we'd like to get done our last year and how those align with our goals, and make a plan.
Thank you. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. In the, I think it was June, our last committee of the whole meeting, we decided to form a bylaw subcommittee, and I did send out a Google spreadsheet asking for ideas of what people might be wanting to talk about regarding bylaws. There have been a couple of people that have added to that spreadsheet. I'm going to send out a doodle this coming week to arrange for our first meeting, and any and all trustees that are interested are welcome to attend, whether you put something on the spreadsheet or not. But it would be nice to have a really focused conversation about what we need to change before the end of our term.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. The second report I'd like to share tonight is just an update from the Halton Learning Foundation. First, an invitation to all people present here tonight and everyone watching that the Benefit Bash is going to be on November the 2nd. So please watch for further communications regarding that, but if you could put a placeholder in your calendars, that would be wonderful. Secondly, I think I'd like to share the wonderful news of that the Halton Learning Foundation in their work last year supported, I think it was 811 students, up from 667 students the year before, to the tune of $161,800. In addition, a further $138,000 were spent to support engagement grants for schools in the areas of mental health, environment, arts and music, media literacy, and physical education. So the Halton Learning Foundation is off to a great start. I know we've got a wonderful meeting happening next Tuesday, and I know Chair Amos has been invited, and I'll be in attendance as well. It's an evening meeting next week, and it's all about fundraising and marketing. But I would like to ask a question, if I could, of Superintendent Pennyfather, if he would share the innovative and creative way that the HDSB recently helped the HLF in raising a lot of startup money for this school year.
I'd love to, through the chair. It's always good to tell good news stories. It actually piggybacked on the UNICEF campaign that our communications department, we came up with a plan with UNICEF and for online donations and how to communicate and how we're going to work together. And last spring, in a very quick campaign, we raised $14,500 for UNICEF, and that was for Nigeria and Sudan, the famine there. And that was just simply going out to our families who they really want to help, and they really want to help kids. And so that was actually matched by federal funds, so it was $29,000, which is really a big help. So working with the executive director of the Halton Learning Foundation, Leslie Mansfield, she wanted to do some kind of fall campaign, and came to me, and of course I ran around the corner upstairs to Rob, or Superintendent Etoff, and he worked with his team, and they put together for a plan, and in 1 week, with just the simple power of a good email, they raised $8,000, and that's for the Barriers to Learning Fund, and that's this time of year especially, it's helpful. You have kids starting co-ops who need work boots. You have winter coat season coming. You have kids who can't participate in phys ed class because they don't have running shoes, and those are the kinds of things that the Barriers to Learning Fund does. So that was a really positive response. So we're looking ahead to see how we can support this great partner of ours. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. And just in conclusion, the numbers are rising each year for the Halton Learning Foundation to support. In 2015 to 16, there were 667 students supported. Last year, it had raised to the number of 811, and we're not sure what this year will bring, but certainly that kickoff campaign is a great start for the HLF this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no further speakers to the committee reports, we're now up to trustee questions and comments. And I'd like to remind you, we're still going into private session. Trustee Gerbens.
Thank you, Chair Amos. There is a topic that I'm sure any of you that have students attending schools, you're probably in the same place that I am, which is in a bit of a form hell. So last night I sat for an hour and some filling out forms, and some of them are so redundant. I'm filling out the same doctor's information on, I have 3 children, like on 4 or more forms. My one child was going out for a team, and so I'm filling out the medical and safety form, the general one, and then I flip it, and I'm like, it's the same form! And I don't understand why we're not, this is not valuing the time of the parents. I really like our streamlined form for updating contact information and emergency numbers and things like that. You just make the changes in the little shaded area in red or blue, and you sign it, and there you go. But when it comes to those safety and medical forms and other forms that we fill out every year, most of the information will be the same. So can we not be more efficient and form a form like that, or move into the new century here and actually put it online and have people update it themselves and certify it like we do with the vulnerable screening, that yes, this has been done and the information's the same.
Director Miller.
Could you put that concern on a form, please? I'll let Associate Director address it seriously.
Thank you for that, Trustee Gerbens. We'll take it back to school ops. It's probably time that we did a review of some of those startup pieces, and we'll have a look at that.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Trustee Daniele.
Thank you very much. As you're all aware, Martin Street was closed last year for the rebuild, and they've gone back to school. And the town of Milton, in its infinite wisdom, took away the crossing guard for Martin Street. And they're not putting it back without a traffic study. Given the increased bus level and the proximity of Holy Rosary School, it's a serious traffic concern. And I have spoken with Superintendent Newton, and she is aware that I'm going to ask if the director's office could possibly reach out, any influence she might have with the town of Milton, to impress upon them the increased traffic and the safety issues at that school. It had a crossing guard before it was rebuilt. It should be put back in. I'm going to be sending my concerns to them as well, but I think your title is higher than mine, and so might have a little more weight. So if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Director, looking into that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee Daniele. Yeah, I'll work with Superintendent Newton, and we'll because there was a crossing guard there before the renovations, right? Well, yeah. So, yeah.
It was a crossing guard when it was a 500 student close. There's no one now, it's a 700, and it takes them forever to do a traffic study. And while they're doing the traffic study, everyone gets worried about the safety of the kids, and they drive them. So then they see no kids walking, and they deem that there isn't a crosswalk needed. So,
yeah, I will talk with Superintendent Newton, and I just have to be careful because I don't want, because what could happen. I'll get parents phoning me, can you contact about this and crossing guards in other locations? But given that there was one there, I think this is a different circumstance. Oh, Jackie's got
something. Superintendent Newton.
And through the chair, to support Trustee Daniele, that's very true. We even had our local politician doing a crossing guard impromptu yesterday and today, and Suzanne Burwell was out there, and some parents have even suggested for busing that a superintendent could drive the bus that would help pick up her child. So yeah, people are a little frustrated out there right now.
Thank you. Vice Chair Graves.
Thank you. And I actually have kind of like 3 questions, so I might have to go back on the list. The first one, I think, is jointly with Trustee Daniele. In light of some events that happened over the summer in Milton, not some events, one event in particular, there's a lot of parental concern and sensitivity around safety with respect to young students. And of particular concern right now is fencing around schoolyards. And on behalf of the Milton community, I'd like to ask, why are the fences not fully enclosing the yards, and what safety measures are in place during outdoor times in particular at elementary schools to ensure that our children are safe while they're on the school grounds?
Superintendent Cullen.
Through the chair to Trustee Graves, one of the issues that we've addressed over the years has been all the school sites are different. So one of the issues that we have is a very open and successful partnership with our municipal partners, and many of our school sites are in fact a school site and an adjacent public park. So to reduce the land use and maximize the amount of green space that's available in a particular community, that has been a very successful model that we've been using here in Halton for many years. We would then not want to fence between, obviously, the school and the park. The park philosophy is that it's a public space and that therefore the public needs access to some of those spaces in the either after hours or weekend types of uses. The other one is a lot of walkway systems that have been developed. A lot of the trail systems that most municipalities have now tried to enforce for fitness and outdoor activities will connect any of those green spaces, whether it's a school site, park, or walkway system. And in many cases, we've actually created access points on the rear portion of schools so that students don't have to walk around. It's not just as simple necessarily as around. They could have to go through several blocks of walking route to get to a school site if there was no access point through some of the back access areas. So we've actually got neighborhoods where they've created walkways between the houses specifically to get through and access the school site. So we can look at specific ones if there's a particular issue, or again, as I say, they're all unique. So we'd look at a number of different factors, but many of those issues that I've mentioned would impact where we would or would not necessarily want to put fencing up. The other issue we've addressed is residential properties putting gates or openings in their own fence to get access to the schoolyard. Although it might be great for them and their child, it presents a potential concern that the school believes that area is fenced and is secure and might have a different level of supervision required than an open space. So one of the issues we've toyed with for many years has been just how strict we get about enforcing that no gate policy in the back portion. So we try and keep it as a board fence, not a residential shared fence that somebody can poke a gate through. We've seen some very creative methods of doing it to try and camouflage it, but we typically don't allow those in for that same reason. So some of the spaces we do fence, some of them we don't, and it really comes down to a site-by-site circumstances where the risk may be so great that we would actually fence it for that purpose. I'll turn it over to one of the superintendent of schools to comment on what takes place around supervision in those spaces.
Well, just because you said elementary, I'll jump in as an elementary principal. You know, we have supervision on our playgrounds, and just like Jerry indicated, every school is different. Every elementary school is different. So depending on the sight lines you have, do you have portables? Do you not have portables? Do you have trees? So we supervise the yard, the blacktop, the creative playground, the field, and we put enough staff out there that, in the principal's opinion, that we can safely supervise a playground. There's no ratio policy. There's not a ratio because every school is different.
I could also add too, he's probably a more hands-on leader than Superintendent Trufant. So staff usually wear vests too, so they're quite visible. So if there's adults on a playground that look I mean, out of place adults that aren't staff are easily recognized and approached, just because they do tend to stick out a little bit more. So that you'll see a lot of staff with vests and that sort of thing.
No, you're done? Okay.
Since there's no one else, can I ask my
Go ahead,
other
next question.
Yes. So I have two other questions out of conversations with people in Milton. One, I'm just curious about Boyne and how we're doing for numbers, and whether or not we think that it's going to push over capacity and head on over to Anne J. MacArthur at some point this fall. And then my other one is about the school cash online. I've heard that it's crashed. And are principals aware of that? And are there any accommodations that will be made for things that need to be paid early in the year? That's it.
Through the chair, I'm not aware that the system has crashed, and certainly if that was the case, I'm not saying it's not, that would have been brought to my attention. The change, there was the change that was initiated just this past week. As you know, we have switched systems, and again, it's a system that is widely used across our province, across the country. So I can follow up on it, but I'm not aware that it has crashed.
Superintendent Newton.
And through the chair to Trustee Kim Graves, Boyne's numbers today are 1116. So over the summer, they registered over 100 students into their school system, and continually every day. At this point, we still do not have a grade that we have to close down because of class size. So so we're still open for business, if you like, for all families and all grades. But AJ MacArthur, in talking with their school admin team, is also growing. But they also have, through Superintendent Cullen, have remained 2 cottages on site so that we will be able to take some overflow, and they are excited about doing that, as we anticipate when our planning member, Don Roselli, comes back to the board meeting in 2 weeks to introduce the request for a boundary review for the schools in those areas for the upcoming build of the new elementary school. But right now we're at 1116.
Thank you. Trustee Gibbons.
Thank you, Chair Amos. This just sparked my memory when Vice Chair Graves mentioned school cash online. I've had a question come in from a high school parent bemoaning the fact that there's no wallet available, which there was a wallet available with the last cashless system, and I was wondering if someone could speak to that, please.
Through the chair, the switch over to the school cash online, that's one of the capabilities that at the time of the switchover was not available. However, because of the size of the vendor, they are actively pursuing to put this into place, and we anticipate it was not available on day one, but we anticipate that through their work that they will have it in place shortly. There is a debit card option that is available. I know not all kids have it, but that is also an option, and again, they're very committed to having that in place shortly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. That prompted my last question for the evening, I hope. A few years ago, one of the trustees that sat around this table initiated some conversation on student fees and whether or not they were allowed to be advertised as mandatory or if they needed to be advertised as voluntary. And I've noticed over the years, having my children at a variety of schools and having other schools under my charge, that the wording of the notes home prior to the start of the school year are not consistent depending on the school or the principal. Some of them make it quite clear that the school fees are voluntary, and some of them word it like, please provide a receipt. So it doesn't really sound very voluntary when they ask you to provide a receipt. And I also noticed that some schools are charging $25 and some schools are charging $40 for their school fees. So I was hoping we could re-examine the communication home to parents and the difference in the fee structure. This is at secondary. The difference in the fee structure that is being requested because it is voluntary and it needs to be apparent that it's voluntary, especially for families that have multiple children in high school. This can become very expensive, and there have been expressions of concern.
Through you, Chair Amos, to Trustee Collard, they are volunteer. They shouldn't actually be called school fees. They're engagement fees, school engagement fees, and they are indeed voluntary. There are some fees that the schools charge, of course, for participation in athletics and et cetera and so on that they need to recoup the costs. But Associate Director Bull will take the school ops to check on the messaging that's going out there and the disparity, I guess, in the amounts being charged. So yes, we'll go back and look at it. I thought we'd wrestled that bear to the ground a while ago, but thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Pappen.
Sorry. Through the chair to Director Miller, I had a discussion with Trustee Reynolds regarding this, and we were wondering if this should maybe fall under accessibility with finances and the inability of some families to provide, the financial ability to pay for these expenses.
Through Chair Amos to Trustee Pappen, the intent of them being voluntary is that's exactly it. And so families that couldn't afford don't pay. And there's no kind of questions asked or anything like that. In terms of some of the other fees around athletics, as an example, schools do a very good job of identifying those students that can't afford to participate in a sport and cover those costs for those kids. I have no doubt that there's some that slip through, either because there's no identification that they are having financial challenges and so on. But in terms of I wouldn't say it's an accessibility issue around the student engagement fees, because they're voluntary anyway, and they're supposed to be collected for the entire school student body. So whatever money comes in is to be spent on the entire group. So whether it's bringing in a speaker at an assembly or I don't know, other events like organizing a day out, whatever they're doing for their student engagement. But certainly, maybe the messaging is the biggest issue of it. And so Associate Director Bull will certainly take that down, get it on the agenda, and say, how do we, I guess maybe not fix it, but refix it would be the better way to describe it. So.
Thank you. Trustee Everyhope.
Just on that note, we set the student fee offset of $20 and $35 of quite a number of years ago. And I was wondering when that number would potentially be looked at again. I know that would be normally part of the budget process, but I'm wondering whether there's a way to survey the principals in the fall on when they make their planning and they kind of figure out and they sort of do all that massive buying of all the things that these $35 is supposed to cover. Because if it was supposed to cover the beakers in science and the wood in tech and all the other things that used to be nickeled and dimed, the cost may have risen and it can sort of slip by as far as, is that still enough? And then if we could survey while they're actually spending the money, then by the time we get to budget, we'd know, and or in January, if we have any extra money, we might be able to send some, even $1 or $2 per student, back to these schools so that they don't have to do all this shell games of trying to squeeze the money out, because a lot of them are doing what we asked them to do, which is not asking for any more money. But as they get more and more students, or as inflation kicks in or whatever, they may be finding it a little bit trickier.
Through Chair Amos to Trustee Harvey Hope. A couple of years ago, when I was Associate Director, we formed a committee in which we met with, we had principal representatives both from elementary and secondary on there to talk about the offset fees, because it was always the intention to bring it back to the board to increase the offset fees. It's 35 at secondary, 20 at elementary, and it was always the intention to increase that. But when we sat down with the principals, and I'm not sure if Superintendent Veerman was on it or one of her, I think it was actually Controller Sweetman that was on it, it became apparent that there was less flexibility for the schools and the principals by increasing the offset fees. What they preferred to do was us to increase their general amounts of budget, because the offset fees were very specific around student engagement activities and a few other things here and there. So what we did as a board, and we brought it as a staff, and that committee recommended, and we brought it to the board, was to increase the amount of money that they were getting per student per year. I can't remember the amounts of money, but so the offset fees remained where they were. And I suspect if we were to reform that committee, maybe it's a time to renew and take another look at it. I suspect that they may come back with the same thing, because they said the offset fees, the consensus amongst principals, because there were committee members, and then they went back to the respective groups, HSPA and HEPA. The consensus was that increasing the offset fees did not help them as much in their schools as increasing how much they got per student. So perhaps it's a time we go back and look at it again, because it was 2 or 3 years ago we did that. Maybe it's time to look at it again. I don't know.
All right. Thank you. And seeing no further speakers, so may I have a motion to rise and into private? Trustee Gray, seconded by Trustee Pappen. All those in favor? Yep.
You guys.
Sec. Previous motion? No, we don't have a second. Awesome, thank you. All those in favor? Trustee Graves, Trustee L. Harrison? Trustee Graves? That passes unanimously. Thank you, and good night to all our superintendents.
Long time since I asked permission to go to the washroom.
You have 5 minutes.